This man's job is to be the boss of villains. Every day, he hunts down the scum and degenerates of society, and his opponents are the superpowered people known as heroes. In society, he appears as the ultimate villain. But in daily life, the man disguises himself as the owner of a company. All he originally wanted was to live an ordinary life with his girlfriend, who was just a civilian. But on the day the man went to visit his girlfriend's family, he never could have imagined that everyone sitting there would be top-tier heroes. But he had already made up his mind to hide his identity to the very end and get married successfully. Jaerim took out the business card of his company, Devil Cleaning. Grandpa looked at the card and smiled, saying that Jaerim was young and promising, while he himself knew nothing about business. Jaerim smiled along and said it was just a small company, not worth mentioning at all. And Grandpa was once the head of his girlfriend Kim Hae-in's family, and also the legendary figure who personally led this family to its peak. In this world, superpowered people make up 40% of the population, and their abilities are often inherited within families. In the past, superpowered people who had lost control kept causing chaos. That group of people, who were originally just vigilantes, gradually grew into heroic families that protected their regions. These hero families even established a national hero council and controlled the entire order. And the legendary figure who created all of this was now sitting in front of Jaerim, complaining that the bread was too hard. Jaerim's hands were trembling, because the other party's influence was enough to completely ruin him. What are you spacing out for? His future mother-in-law asked him what exactly he usually did at the company, and whether he was very busy. How should I put it? Actually, I go and hire cleaning specialists, and then go to factories or other buildings to clean up places that need to be dealt with. Then I hire them to come over and help share some of the workload. But if necessary, I also do the cleaning myself. Anyway, that's about it. It's all just dirty and tiring work. Just then, the head chef pushed in more food and entered the banquet. No way, how much longer do I have to stay here? If this dinner keeps going, I'm going to be exposed. Let's hurry up and finish eating, then leave. Suddenly, his phone rang. Jaerim knew it was his subordinate looking for him. No, I can't answer it here. If they hear it, I'm done for. He said something to his future father-in-law and mother-in-law, then went out first to take the call. He put on his earphones. Didn't I say already? I have something important tonight, so why are you still bothering me? Sorry to disturb you, boss. The target we've been chasing has already been surrounded. The target is at the location of the Lee family gathering. Go on. The operation should be going smoothly, right? At that moment, his fiancée's uncle, Kim Ihan, suddenly walked over. Jaerim quickly took off his earphones. I'm not interrupting your phone call, am I? Do you smoke? No, she doesn't like the smell of smoke, so I quit a long time ago. Could he have heard something? Jaerim's heart tightened, and he immediately felt that this man had to be treated carefully. Kim Hae-in, after today, our relationship will be able to take another step forward. The future is already right in front of us. I'm her uncle, and I'm not even married yet. I never thought my niece would be the one to get married first. He told Jaerim to sit down and said they could chat for a while. When Kim Hae-in first introduced you to us, you must have been both nervous and shocked. She has been weak and sickly ever since she was born, and she has never shown any superpower. For her safety, we have always tried to keep her out of the public eye as much as possible. She also never tells anyone that she comes from a hero family. I think she must have been very lonely. But now, as her real uncle, all I hope is that she can meet the right person and have happiness of her own. He said warmly that he wanted to help Jaerim prepare the wedding invitations, but in fact, he had already prepared the wedding invitation long ago. It should be here. Are you looking for this? He raised his hand and slapped it onto the table. How could you be so careless? You actually lost it. Do you know where I found this, Jaerim? At the scene of the last strike against the villain executioner. Damn it, how could I be this careless? I actually left something that important at the scene. It seems that now, I'll have to take good care of you first, Kim Ihan. Suddenly, a broadcast voice rang out. Kim family, have you finished dinner now? This place has already been taken over by the executioner. No, where did this executioner come from? Aren't I the real one? Kay appeared at the scene. If you don't want the hostages to die, go to the parking lot. You filthy hypocrites. Jaerim and Kim Ihan exchanged a glance, then immediately rushed toward the banquet hall. The moment Kim Ihan pushed open the door, he realized that everyone was gone. They had already evacuated. Jaerim ran straight to the balcony. If they're not here, then where would they be? And where's my Kim Hae-in? Then he saw the Kim family downstairs heading toward the parking lot. Kim Hae-in followed behind them, being protected tightly. Jaerim was completely speechless. Who exactly was impersonating his identity? Isn't that my subordinate? Why is he here too? Wasn't he supposed to be going after the Lee family? A message came through on his phone, saying that the target had now been changed and they had moved over to Kim Hae-in's side. You little punk, are you messing with me on purpose? How am I supposed to clean this up now? Kim I-hung patted Jaerim on the shoulder and told him to wait here for now. Next, he would handle it himself. Kim Il-hun gathered his strength and activated his air blast ability. If that attack landed, it would be enough to kill. No, I need to make some noise first and draw their attention away. Meanwhile, his future father-in-law was questioning the other side about how they had found out their location. Do you think that was the only information that got leaked? What I'm talking about is your Kim Hae-in. Do you really think she wouldn't be reported on by others? Of course she would, because she has no superpower at all to protect herself. Now, they wanted to know exactly how Kay had learned this information. Do you think I would tell you how I found out? As if I get the chance, I'll kidnap her and use her as a hostage. Kim Il-hun was already prepared to personally finish off this villain. Damn it. Jae-rim jumped down and landed straight into the bushes below. His subordinate was still wondering which idiot had suddenly popped out. Now, it's my turn. Beside him, Kim Hae-in was still worried about whether he had hurt himself in the fall, and he only said that it did indeed hurt a little. Kay was full of confusion. What exactly do these two showing up here mean? Kay, you're in danger right now, you know that? The more Kay looked, the more familiar this person seemed. Boss, is that you? It's rare to see you in casual clothes. This brat still doesn't know what kind of situation he's in right now. So I can only use some methods. You should talk a little less, Kay. A stone wrapped in an airwave smashed fiercely toward Jae-rim. Boss, what are you trying to do? His future father-in-law, Kim Young-sik, began to suspect that Jae-rim might also have superpowers. And because of Jae-rim's actions just now, Kim Il-hun also gave up his suspicion that Jae-rim was working for the executioner. With an oppressive aura, Jae-rim walked toward Kay step by step. Don't blame me for hitting too hard. Boss, what exactly are you trying to do? Don't hit me. We're on the same side. Jae-rim was just about to make his move and give his subordinate a brutal beating first. Unexpectedly, his future father-in-law suddenly shrank and jumped over. He told Jae-rim to calm down first, because the police had already arrived. He had also noticed that an ordinary person should not have such great strength. Jae-rim deliberately put on an angry expression, pointed at his subordinate, and said that this guy had actually dared to kidnap Kim Hae-in. His subordinate was completely dumbfounded. What was going on now? Just as his future father-in-law was about to take Jae-rim away, Jae-rim shook his phone. At a glance, the subordinate realized that the boss had been sending him messages the whole time telling him to retreat. And only then did he finally understand that the boss had another plan. Idiot, hurry up and run. What are you still standing there for? The other henchman ran over to ask Kay. Kay stared at the phone and fell into deep thought. Why, boss, I don't understand. Why do you have such a good relationship with the Kim family? We're villains. Why have you suddenly become such a coward? Where did all your backbone from before go? I really don't understand. At that moment, the subordinate took out the timed bomb Jae-rim had given him. Now, let's blow all these heroes sky high. As soon as he finished speaking, his arm was hit, and the timed bomb flew right out of his hand. Quick, get the bomb. We absolutely can't let it explode here. Suddenly, a green telekinetic force steadily held up the bomb and stopped it in midair. His future mother-in-law used her mind control ability and caught the bomb. Then she directly flung the bomb high into the sky. Now we don't need to worry about the bomb anymore. Watch out for the enemy. But no one expected Kay to charge directly toward the bomb. Now, he wanted to throw the bomb back down and detonate it. Jae-rim held up his phone for him to see and simply stared at him quietly. Get lost right now. Don't touch that bomb. He lunged at nothing, and immediately no longer dared to touch the timed bomb. By the time he landed back on the ground, the countdown had only a few seconds left. The bomb hung in the night sky, and in the next second, a blinding white light exploded with a roar. Jae-rim froze for a moment, not understanding where this layer of protective barrier had come from. And then he realized it was Kim Hae-in's older brother, Kim Hae-in, who had used a barrier to protect everyone. Kay couldn't figure out why even the enemy was being protected too. Could there be some hidden truth behind this? But he still decided to temporarily obey Jae-rim's orders first. At that moment, the underling took out new explosives again, saying that he had long prepared a backup plan. Kay kicked him away and told his subordinate to stop causing more destruction. The plan ends now. Don't act on your own. Listen to me. He hurriedly covered it up, saying that this sneak attack had only ever been meant as intimidation anyway. However, a civilian actually daring to stand up and resist has left quite a deep impression on me. So, give me a thumbs up. We're withdrawing first. The subordinate was still asking why they had to run, and Jae-rim could only helplessly say that it was the boss's order. The other henchmen behind them were still confirming whether they were really leaving. Yes, how many times do I have to say it? At that moment, he suddenly felt a powerful oppressive force pressing down from behind. Kim Young-sik coldly questioned him, after causing such a huge mess, did he really think he could still leave? The green light surged violently in an instant, and Kay had clearly underestimated the Guardian's strength. This isn't right, boss. At least stop him, will you? The scene shifts, and his hands are already tightly locked in superpower handcuffs. He lay slumped in the back seat of the police car, his face filled with utter despair. The phone screen was full of messages from J-Rim telling him to retreat, but now everything was too late. In the transport vehicle, the grunt kept asking questions, and Kay only told him to shut up already. Under the night sky, the leaves swayed gently in the wind, as if silently mourning this turmoil. The Kim family said with smiles that another villain had been captured, and this time they had even reeled in a big fish as a bonus. The crisis was finally over, and J-Rim let out a sigh of relief as he took Kim Haeun's hand. But Kim Haeun suddenly stopped walking and calmly suggested they break up. J-Rim's mind went completely blank, and he couldn't react at all. He quickly explained that he had already met her family, and no one had objected. Kim Haeun broke down crying on the spot, because that was exactly the root of the problem. That's why I didn't want to drag you into this. It was supposed to be a warm family dinner, but instead you ended up appearing in front of me in such a miserable state. She raised her hand and gently brushed over his damaged suit, her voice filled with heartache. She looked at him and asked, "You're obviously just an ordinary person, so why did you still force yourself like that just now? Isn't all of this happening because I was born into a hero family, and that's what brought this danger upon us?" Crying, she said that if they got married in the future and dangers like this kept happening, then maybe they should just forget it. J-Rim stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. "It's okay. The only thing I'm worried about is whether you were hurt. I want to stay by your side forever and protect you." Standing beneath the tree, he made a promise to her and asked her to let him remain by her side forever. She softly agreed, but J-Rim broke out in a cold sweat inside. He had almost really gotten dumped. "It's okay, your sacrifice was worth it. It fulfilled our happiness. And on top of that, I even managed to play the role of the perfect son-in-law in front of her family." His future mother-in-law blushed as she praised his words, saying that things seemed truly stable this time. But the family was very curious. He was obviously just an ordinary person, so how had he been able to fight so well just now? J-Rim could only scratch his head awkwardly. He explained that he really didn't have any superpowers, he just exercised a lot normally, and that what happened just now was purely an outburst in a moment of urgency. He also told Kim Haeun that it was because he had heard the villain mention her that he had suddenly been overcome with anger. Wait a second. Kim Haeun suddenly stopped him. J-Rim's heart clenched at once. If the other man brought up the wedding invitation now, then everything would truly be over. But Kim Haeun suddenly let out a deep sigh and then apologized for having suspected J-Rim before. J-Rim was completely stunned, his glasses nearly fell off from shock. Patting J-Rim on the shoulder, he explained that he had previously mistaken J-Rim for one of the villain's subordinates. His girlfriend poked her head out from behind J-Rim, looking confused as she asked what exactly they were talking about. "I mean this." Kim Haeun took out the wedding invitation. His girlfriend asked in confusion, "Why is our invitation in his hands?" The other man explained that this was something the villain had left behind at the crime scene last time. Now he understood. J-Rim and Kim Haeun had actually been targeted by the villains long ago. He continued explaining that it was precisely because of this invitation that he had mistaken J-Rim for an accomplice of the villains. Only then did J-Rim finally breathe a sigh of relief. He gave 2 dry laughs and at last cleared himself of suspicion. Kim Young-sik flew into a rage on the spot. This was nothing less than the villains declaring war on their entire family. Standing under the night sky, they finally realized that the villain's next target might be the children. His future mother-in-law had already seen through everything. From the moment her daughter's information was leaked, she had already begun taking precautions. She sighed that the villain's move this time had been far too bold. Watching all this, J-Rim couldn't help thinking to himself, since when had his future mother-in-law even started using her powers? This mother-in-law was way too dangerous. He would definitely have to be more careful around her in the future. With one command from Grandpa, the family's elite standing force system was officially activated. In the final assembly, everyone struck fighting poses, and the atmosphere instantly became heated. J-Rim was dumbfounded. This family really was outrageously absurd in their own different ways. Grandpa spoke domineeringly, saying that for their wedding, he would personally come out of retirement and capture the villains as a congratulatory gift. J-Rim was speechless after hearing that. This wedding gift was way too hardcore. His future mother-in-law followed up with an invitation, hoping that the two of them would move in directly, with her personally providing all-around protection. Looking at this whole display, J-Rim felt awkward and helpless, and could only say honestly that this arrangement was a bit too over the top. When his girlfriend heard his reaction to the family's standing force system, her eyes dimmed immediately. She thought J-Rim felt all of this was too troublesome, and that was why he had shown that expression, so she instantly felt disappointed and hurt again. Inside, J-Rim was extremely conflicted. He felt sorry for his girlfriend, but also knew very clearly that this concerned the entire organization, and he simply could not back down. His future mother-in-law said that the wedding would probably have to be postponed until after the executioner was captured, and the moment J-Rim heard that, he quickly agreed to the suggestion that they live together. Kim Il-hun was still enthusiastically welcoming Jae-rim to join them, but in Jae-rim's heart there was only one thought left. Why did I stupidly agree to this on impulse just now? Everyone laughed and comforted Jae-rim, saying that this didn't count as living with his future in-laws, it was only for their protection. Jae-rim could only force out a smile to go along with them, while internally cursing himself countless times. The scene shifts again to the villain detention center, where someone received an order. The next second, a key was thrown into the cell. Kay, who was locked inside, unexpectedly received this key of unknown origin. The guard urged him to hurry and unlock the cuffs and escape, saying there was no surveillance right now. Kay frowned and asked who exactly had sent this key. Who is being so kind? Do you even need to ask? It was boss. The scene changes once again, and Jae-rim is still forced to move into his girlfriend's house. On the surface, he acts calm and composed. He absolutely cannot expose his identity. But inside the bag, Kay is restlessly stirring with unease. He pressed the doorbell, and the person who came to open the door was his girlfriend, Kim Hae-in. He said that he had missed her very much, and she told him to come in first, saying the family was all waiting for him. Her family had prepared another full feast for him. That's great, because I haven't eaten yet. Now, the plan to blend into a hero family officially begins. His aunt smiled and said, "Your dog is so cute." Of course, but very soon, you'll get to see what he's really capable of. Time rewinds to a few days earlier, that Sunday. Kay was secretly wondering why their usually cold and ruthless boss had been acting stranger and stranger lately. Stop complaining, Kay. Right now, we're going to hold a high-level executioner meeting. Q crossed her arms and only wanted to know what this important matter was this time. Jay had followed Jae-rim on many operations, but still could not figure out what he was thinking. The reason I called you all here this time is to tell you one thing. I'm getting married. Boss, when did you start dating someone? How do I know absolutely nothing about this? There was even a trace of anticipation in Q's eyes. Boss, have you finally decided to propose to me? Are you crazy? What could boss possibly see in you? Murderous intent instantly flashed in Q's eyes, making Kay quickly shut up. What, do you want to fight me? Enough, you two, stop arguing. Sit down, all of you. Understood, boss. Only the ever-calm Jay sincerely congratulated him on his upcoming marriage. However, he was also very curious about who exactly Jae-rim was marrying, and when the wedding was planned. Don't rush, I'll show you. The wedding is in 8 months. This is your future sister-in-law, Kim Hae-in. Q's fantasy shattered on the spot. Why isn't it me? Boss, are you messing with us? This is our enemy, the youngest daughter of the Kim family. I know, that's exactly why I called you here for this meeting. My future in-laws are the famous Kim family. They are one of the 5 great families who founded the Hero Council back in the day. And this unexpected encounter also led me to make an unprecedented decision. Isn't this the best opportunity for us to eliminate those heroes? Kim Hae-in, you're the only family I need. As for the others, I absolutely won't show any mercy. So that's how it is. Both is brilliant. He became convinced that Jae-rim's wedding was bait meant to bring down the Kim family, and that when the time came, they could wipe them all out in one stroke. Looking at how self-satisfied he was, Jae-rim only felt both annoyed and amused. In short, I will enter the hero's stronghold as their future son-in-law and enjoy their protection. The real hunt will begin after the wedding. All of them wore knowing smiles, as a grand scheme quietly brewed in the shadows. And true slaughter often happens when the prey is at its most relaxed and off guard. I absolutely cannot allow any accident to happen before the wedding. Otherwise, how could Kim Hae-in marry me with peace of mind? But boss, the head of security trailed off. He reported that one of the Kim family members had appeared on their turf at that very moment. He asked Jae-rim whether this too was part of the plan. In the footage, that figure in a blue tracksuit was slowly walking this way. Jae-rim froze on the spot. Wasn't that Kim Il-hun? What was he doing here? And at that exact moment, his phone rang at the worst possible time. On the other end of the line, Kim Il-hun was calling directly, asking why Jae-rim was still at work when it was clearly Sunday. He said with a smile, "Your company is in a protected zone." This time he had come specifically for a surprise inspection, and casually asked whether Jae-rim was free right now. Holding the phone, Jae-rim had only one thought left in his mind. A surprise inspection too? Which idiot let him in? But aloud he answered lightly, "I'm free." The other man also said that he could already sense Jae-rim's location. "What? You don't even need my permission? Don't open the door yet, I'm not ready." "Are you in there, Jae-rim?" "I'm opening the door." "Everyone, get into position. Stop spacing out." "Jae-rim, are you here? Why don't I see you?" Meanwhile, the Kim family members were still analyzing whether Jae-rim really was the executioner. Although Kim Il-hun had said what he said before, they still could not be completely sure. Of course, they also could not rule out the possibility that Jae-rim really was the executioner. "Do you understand what I mean, Kim Young-sik?" "I do, father." They decided to send Kim Il-hun once again to test Jae-rim and catch him off guard. "Hey, Jae-rim, where are you hiding? I can already sense your presence. I'm right behind the door. Tell him to be a little gentler when he opens it. This damned hero. I still have to put up with him for a while. Jae-rim put on a generous act and invited him in, though he himself felt a little awkward first. Taking the opportunity, Jae-rim introduced the company executives to him, Jae and Q. Under the hood, Jae was so nervous that cold sweat kept pouring down, and his business card read Marketing Director. Next was Planning Director Q. She smiled and greeted him. The moment he saw Q, Kim I-hun's heart skipped a beat, and he stared blankly on the spot. She took the initiative to extend her hand and said that she often saw him in the news, introducing herself as Planning Director Siona. I'm Kim I-hun, pleased to meet you. Siona praised him, saying he was even more handsome in person than in the news, and he instantly blushed and kept grinning foolishly, leaving Jae-rim full of question marks beside him. I get it now. So this is your type. At that moment, a sudden dog bark came from the meeting room, and he turned his head in confusion. The next second, he was completely melted by cuteness. Jae-rim, your company actually has such an adorable pet. Actually, this was K's ability. He could turn any part of his body into an animal he had touched before, but this time, disguising himself as a dog was honestly a bit perfunctory. He scooped up the puppy in one go and asked Jae-rim in amazement whether he actually kept pets in the office. Holding the constantly struggling K, he happily asked Jae-rim how long this dog had been raised. Jae-rim could only awkwardly push up his glasses, not knowing how to respond for a moment. He signaled to Siona with his eyes, and Siona immediately understood and nodded. Siona brought them into the office, to a relatively safe place. While pretending to look sad, Jae-rim made up an excuse, saying that this dog had been abandoned at the company entrance. After hearing that, he froze in disbelief. He simply could not believe that someone would abandon such a cute puppy. But, well, you know, keeping it at the company forever really isn't a solution. I originally wanted to take it home and raise it, but now that I'm living with Kim Hae-in, I don't know if I can. Kim I-hun turned to look at the others and asked whether they were all allergic to dogs. The moment those words fell, Siona and Jae, still wearing his hood, both trembled in fright at the same time. To keep the lie going, the two of them immediately started sneezing and scratching like crazy, desperately insisting that they really couldn't raise it. Jae-rim kept making things up. Although his tone was full of regret, he said, but I really want to keep it by my side. At this rate, it looks like we may only be able to send it to a shelter. No way, such a cute dog, how can it be treated like that? He stood up on the spot and directly said that the puppy could simply be sent to his house. Without another word, he turned around and rushed out the door, preparing to go home first and ask whether his family could adopt it. Jae-rim looked at Kay lying on the sofa, and Kay timidly asked what they should do next. You'll stay in this form and go home with him, gather intelligence, and prepare for assassination. Once the wedding is over, I'll deal with them. Kay instantly became fired up. Yes, boss, mission guaranteed. He had already started imagining how he would first conquer the entire Kim family with cuteness, then wipe them all out in one net. Jae-rim held him in his palm and solemnly said, I'm counting on you. Kay excitedly started wagging his tail. Just then, Kim I-hun rushed back in again, loudly shouting Jae-rim's name. He excitedly announced that his family had already agreed, so their plan could move forward smoothly too. Afterward, Kim I-hun walked down the street while calling his family to report that everything was safe. He said that there was absolutely nothing unusual about Jae-rim's company. Watching his back, Jae-rim revealed a cold sneer, and in his heart he said only 2 words, idiot. His killing intent was already almost impossible to suppress. Once the wedding is over, I'll make you all pay. Now, both he and Kay have already moved into the Kim household. Sooner or later, they'll regret making this decision. Personally bringing the most dangerous person of all into their home. The Kim family warmly called him over to eat. This smells amazing. I never expected my future father-in-law to have skills like this. Kim Hae-in told him to sit beside her and even made space for him on purpose. Alright, babe, whatever you say. Let's put the plan aside for now. I'm seriously starving. But just as he was about to pick up his chopsticks, the Kim family said they had also prepared a special surprise for him. Jae-rim's heart tightened, and as he looked at the projector in front of him, he had no idea what they were about to show next. To his surprise, Grandpa walked straight up in front of the screen and was actually going to hold a quiz competition at the dinner table. The future son-in-law was full of question marks, because if he answered wrong, he would not even get a single bite of food. The old man said this was all knowledge that only heroes would know, and the meal bell was right at hand. Whoever thought of the answer first could ring in. His girlfriend said helplessly that this was exactly why they had made him come on an empty stomach. The first question was, when looking for a superhero's weakness, what should be evaluated as the top priority? Someone immediately hit the meal bell. I know this. Kim I-hun rushed to answer. Kim Hae-in clapped a hand over his mouth and insisted that Jae-rim answer instead, so he could have a chance to perform well. Jae-rim clenched his fist and gave his answer. make use of their social weaknesses. Social weaknesses? Kim Hae-in looked completely confused. Jae-rim explained seriously that no matter how strong ability users were, they would still ultimately be bound by human nature. They held power in their hands, but at the same time they were tightly restricted by laws and rules. Especially those heroes, honor and public opinion were often their most fatal weak spots. He said it word for word, firmly locking his answer onto social weaknesses. Even Grandpa was stunned by what he said, and for a moment did not know how to refute it. But in the end, he still made the final call and said Jae-rim's answer was wrong. Kim Hae-in raised his hand and gave the correct answer, ability conditions. It turned out Jae-rim had missed the most basic layer of logic. Every ability user's power had a corresponding activation condition, and if the condition was not met, they would suffer a penalty. Of course, this penalty manifested differently in each person. Jae-rim still argued against this view. If I'm strong enough, then how could conditions like that possibly restrain me? Kim Hae-in comforted him, saying it was fine to answer wrong and that no one would let him go hungry. But Jae-rim still refused to admit defeat and said he was not hungry at all. Still, Grandpa acknowledged that Jae-rim's answer was very interesting, even though it was not correct. He handed over a watch as a reward. As long as the middle button on this watch was pressed and held, it could activate an ability and contact a certain person. Once the button was pressed, a protective barrier would spread around the body. It turned out this had been made by Kim Hae-in, and stored inside it was his protective ability. Jae-rim thanked him. With this watch, he would at least have one extra layer of defense and be able to avoid attacks from villains. Kim Hae-in reminded him that he could not relax his guard in daily life either, and he immediately nodded in agreement. Grandpa announced that the next question would begin, but Jae-rim was completely stumped by it. The question was a true or false one about the hero sponsorship system, but his thoughts drifted back to a long time ago, back when he was still very young. A woman standing in the light asked him whether he wanted to become a hero. In truth, he had already known his answer for a long time, but he had never said it out loud. I don't know. He chose to lie, swallowing his real words back down his throat. Kim Hae-in raised her hand and suggested taking a break first, then pulled him out to buy ice cream, which also helped him out of the awkward situation. The sunlight made his eyes ache, but the hatred in Jae-rim's heart had not faded in the slightest. He did not want to let a single one of those heroes off. He wanted to destroy all heroes, because he hated them. At his side, Kim Hae-in softly called his name, pulling him back from his thoughts. She felt that this activity of having to win food through knowledge-based buzz-in questions seemed to have really made him feel a little down. But everyone is trying hard, aren't they? We all hope you can become one of us. Jae-rim told her there was no need to apologize. He was actually very grateful that everyone had been so warm toward him. Kim Hae-in gently slipped out of Jae-rim's embrace and said that hearing that made her feel relieved too. She told him to take a slow walk and clear his mind a little, while she would take the ice cream back first. Maybe Kim Hae-in really is worried about me. She can always sense my emotions. As Jae-rim looked at the hero family's barrier, he wondered how long this thing had been there. Maybe there's some kind of gap in it. Kim Hae-in hummed to herself as she walked home, completely unaware that danger was approaching behind her. Suddenly, a low rumbling sound came from behind, and a dark shadow appeared at her back. Meanwhile, Jae-rim finally found a small gap in a corner. Hard work really did pay off. He grabbed his hair and froze in place. He had only been looking casually, but he had actually found a breach. He could not help mocking them, so the hero family's security was only this good after all, actually leaving behind such a huge loophole. Doesn't that mean I can do whatever I want and just take them down directly? I can finally put an end to all this stupid in-law nonsense. I've been sick of it for ages. Suddenly, Jae-rim became sharply alert. Someone was beside him. His future father-in-law took his hand and asked what he had just been laughing about, and Jae-rim only said that he had thought of something happy. He said the second round of questions was about to begin and told Jae-rim to hurry back. Jae-rim agreed out loud, but inwardly he was unwilling in 10,000 ways. In his heart he cursed, "You made the food, so all of this goes on your tab. Just wait, I'll definitely get revenge." But the moment he heard the other man call him future son-in-law, Jae-rim still responded instinctively. Suddenly, his future father-in-law smacked him on the back, and the pain made his whole body stiffen. Patting Jae-rim, he said it was only a game, so don't be upset. Even if he answered wrong, there was no need to feel discouraged. At that moment, Jae-rim saw the ice cream bag Kim Hae-in had been carrying lying on the ground nearby. I remember that's exactly the one she was holding just now. Why would it be here? Could it be? He immediately rushed out, frantically searching for Kim Hae-in. Could this gap in the barrier have been made by intruders? Have they already started making their move? But other than us, who else would dare challenge these heroes? The robot in midair suddenly opened fire, and the barrier was instantly blasted with large cracks. Immediately after that, the robot turned its head toward Jae-rim's location, and slung over its shoulder was the unconscious Kim Hae-in. "Robot, I don't care where you came from. today you're getting scrapped. Its mechanical eye lit up with a green glow, and it was already preparing to attack Jaerim as well. Jaerim coldly told it to put down the woman on its shoulder and not harm innocent people. Right now, he was filled with fury and needed an outlet. But he could not activate his power, or his identity would be exposed. Yet at this point, he could no longer care about that. This thing had dared lay a hand on Kim Hae-in, so there was no way it was getting out of here intact today. But at that very moment, Jaerim suddenly froze in place. His power had failed. The mechanical arm let out another harsh metallic grinding sound. Its weapon system had already activated, followed by the humming of a high-energy weapon. Right now, he was basically walking up to die for nothing, unable to do anything at all. At this moment, even protecting himself had become a problem. A shockwave blasted straight toward him, and his future father-in-law blocked the attack for him. He told Jaerim to hurry and find somewhere to hide, and leave the rest to him. It was the first time Jaerim had seen him look this serious. Just how strong was he? And he had almost exposed himself just now too. Fortunately, nothing had happened in the end. Jaerim could not help asking why his future father-in-law still was not transforming and activating his power. Was he really going to fight like this? But even he himself was confused. He did not know why, but at this moment he completely could not activate his ability and transform. The situation was truly too strange. Just then, the mechanical arm rose again, its cannon aiming directly at them. Cold sweat poured down Jaerim's back as he urgently told him to find cover first. They could not possibly withstand this attack. But Kim Young-sik stood where he was without moving a single step. Golden sparks flew from his clenched fists as he directly took up a fighting stance. In a low voice he said that if he could not even protect his own daughter, then what kind of father would that make him? Could this be the legendary presence that only heroes have? He leapt into the air, gathering power and preparing to bring a punch crashing down, only to be sent flying by a single punch from the robot. Jaerim was completely dumbfounded. Wasn't that just pure posing? No, that can't be right. A hero of this level couldn't possibly go down that easily. He'll definitely get back up and keep fighting. Kim Young-sik was still talking tough, saying the other side was only this capable, but you've lost quite a bit of blood too. This won't work. Tim Hae-in will really be in danger. Looks like I can only use this, the watch. It's not over yet. This is only the beginning. Jaerim told his future father-in-law to move aside. This time, it was his turn to charge. He suddenly rushed forward, and slammed his body fiercely into the robot. The tremendous impact actually sent the mechanical body flying. Kim Young-sik was both anxious and helpless. He was cursing out loud, but his eyes were full of worry. But that robot was not damaged at all, and now it was about to fire another shockwave. Jaerim's distress signal had already been sent, but only one question remained in his mind. Why, even now, was there still no sign of any reinforcements arriving? He turned off the protective barrier. A thought suddenly surfaced in his heart. Why not gamble on it? He even felt that this was what this thing was truly meant to be used for. Just then, Kim Hae-in woke up from unconsciousness. Furiously, she drove her elbow downward, hitting the robot's power switch dead on. She broke free from the robot, and then lost control and fell from the air. The next second, Jaerim caught her steadily and quietly asked if she was hurt. Behind them, the robot let out a loud noise, then completely shut down, like a toy that had suddenly run out of steam. Wearing this hood is way too stuffy. And this whole suit of armor is actually kind of tiring to control. Jaerim, what you did just now was too dangerous. Kim Hae-in spoke up to remind him. Kim Hae-in broke free from Jaerim's arms. Jaerim had not even reacted yet and had no idea what she was about to do. The next second, she had already walked up to her brother Kim Hae-in, looking fierce and imposing. We already have to guard against the executioner, and now we have to guard against you too? Are you sick? Jaerim comforted Kim Hae-in, saying that she was just too angry right now. You clearly said this was only supposed to be a simple test. This time you really went too far. The others outside were all so startled that they were at a complete loss. Kay was completely dumbfounded too. We've already infiltrated this place, and it turns out this was still just a test? I need to hurry and ask boss what exactly is going on. He crouched down and picked up the little dog, telling it that their plan had not been exposed. Even so, he himself still could not understand what exactly this test was supposed to mean. He looked up at everyone and asked whether they could explain what had just happened. The scene cuts back to the day Kim Ihan visited Jaerim's company. He insisted that Jaerim was only an ordinary civilian with slightly better physical fitness, and there was nothing special about him at all. But Grandpa did not think so. So they decided to properly teach Jaerim what an ordinary person entering the Kim family ought to be like. Only then did Jaerim suddenly understand. So this quiz-style test had both a theory version and a practical combat version. Kim Young-sik explained that they had not originally intended to make things this serious. Under normal circumstances, if the barrier broke and an enemy invaded, you should have run away immediately and left the battlefield to the heroes. But you actually tried to use the barrier to attack the enemy, and in the end you even turned the barrier off. Of course, we should also apologize to you. This time we really did go a little overboard. Kim Hae-hyun looked full of guilt and said that he had only wanted to make it seem more realistic, so this time it was all his fault. He asked Jae-rim in disbelief exactly how he had realized that the person inside the robot was him. Jae-rim told him that even before pressing the alarm, he had already felt that something was wrong. The backyard had become such a mess, and yet not a single hero had appeared. Then, when he saw that villain robot, the first person he thought of was Kim Hae-hyun, head of the Hero Association's research department. The most crucial piece of evidence was that even though the other side had abducted Kim Hae-hyun, they had not made a single demand from beginning to end. That simply did not fit a villain's logic at all. Jae-rim said with a smile that this whole act had been full of holes from the very start. Grandpa praised Jae-rim, saying that although he was only an ordinary person, he reacted quickly enough and was brave enough as well. Jae-rim scratched his head and laughed foolishly, but inside he was uneasy. Was this really praise, or were they still testing him? Grandpa simply made it plain, saying that Jae-rim clearly possessed talent beyond that of ordinary people. Jae-rim's mind buzzed. He asked Jae-rim whether he still remembered that earlier question about the hero sponsorship program. Grandpa said that besides that, there was also a freelance support system. And now, he was preparing to launch a brand new civilian training program. Jae-rim was still wondering what this could possibly have to do with him, and only in the next second did he suddenly realize the other man's identity. He was Hero Association HR. He directly extended an olive branch to Jae-rim. Do you want to become a hero? Jae-rim even started wondering whether this old man had something wrong with his head. His girlfriend immediately objected. She did not want Jae-rim to become a hero who fought all day long. But Grandpa only waved his hand with a smile and said that while there had indeed never been civilian heroes before, he had always believed that civilians could become heroes too. In the world as it is now, it seems that only people with superpowers are qualified to be called heroes. But those who pull others out of desperate situations, those who protect the weak regardless of the cost, deserve the title of hero just as much. Especially you, Jae-rim, your determination to save people and nothing else. He too had been moved countless times by ordinary people like Jae-rim, and Kim Hae-hyun directly said, "Weren't you already a hero long ago? You talk too much, don't you? I was wrong, stop hitting me." He then brought up his granddaughter again, saying that she had once had a dream of becoming a hero too. Grandpa said that he saw that kind of potential in Jae-rim, and his smile was full of certainty. In the end, he seriously asked Jae-rim whether he was willing to join them. His girlfriend looked at Jae-rim, her face mostly expressionless, but her eyes full of complexity and worry. "Alright, what I want to say is, I do not have what it takes to become a hero. I'm sorry. I don't need to protect everyone. I only want to protect one person." His girlfriend's gaze slowly fell on him. "As long as I can protect Kim Hae-hyun, that's enough." Grandpa let out a soft sigh, unable to hide his disappointment. He had originally thought that Jae-rim would be a very responsible civilian, which was why everything before had been acted out so convincingly. Kim Hae-hyun cut in from the side. "Wasn't all of this done by Kim Young-sik and Kim Hae-hyun? Uncle, how are you even trying to steal the credit?" Kim Hae-hyun added that in order to make everything look more real, he had even really smashed the protective barrier. He was just about to go repair the barrier now, but Jae-rim blurted out instinctively, "Don't fix it." Kim Hae-hyun looked at Jae-rim in total confusion, not understanding at all why he would react like that. Jae-rim stammered and asked whether it had been him just now who made Kim Young-sik unable to use his power. He admitted it directly, but added that it had only been part of the test, and that the effect could only last a few minutes. At the side, Kim Young-sik was still talking tough, saying that he could have taken the other side down in one move. "Dad, just admit it, you're too weak. I don't even want to roast you." Jae-rim's mind started racing. So there really was an invention that could disable superpowers. He had to admit that this technology truly tempted him. But he also knew very clearly just how dangerous such a thing was. His girlfriend gently poked Jae-rim, suggesting that he go upstairs and rest first. He answered softly, and a faint smile unconsciously appeared on his face. In the room at night, they talked about those silly childhood dreams of becoming heroes. Down in the living room, Kim Hae-hyun was still complaining that the old man had overstepped this time. Late at night, Jae-rim waved to Kim Hae-hyun and said goodnight to her. "Let's begin now." He spoke in a low voice, telling Kay to report on today's situation and see whether there were any new leads. Kay immediately reported that this operation had successfully gathered key data on Kim Hae-hyun's invention. Unfortunately, the barrier had already begun to be repaired, and the loophole they had originally been able to use was now gone. Jae-rim interrupted him casually. "Speaking of which, I actually have something to give you." He reached into his pocket. "This is a fragment of the barrier. It should come in handy." Kay took the fragment with both hands, his eyes full of shock. Jae-rim told K to hand the fragment over to a specialist for analysis. Luckily, he had picked up a piece on the spot. K excitedly praised him. If so, then breaking through the barrier was only a matter of time. This is the beginning of their downfall. Let us overthrow the rule of the heroes with our own hands. In the dark night, only Jae-rim's carefree laughter echoed. At the same time, the old man was leaning against the sofa, looking thoughtful. He sighed softly. What a pity. I originally thought I had finally found a good prospect. He turned his head and asked the person behind him whether he was right. The old man slowly spoke in his capacity as the superior of the chief evaluator. He wanted to know whether this future grandson-in-law of his was truly worth paying attention to. The evaluator frankly admitted that he really did not understand why the old man wanted to train an ordinary person. But this young man's courage and physical ability were indeed quite impressive. Lee Yun, the chief evaluator of the Hero Council, said that he still wanted to observe this young man a little longer. The old man smiled. So the evaluator intended to continue the assessment. His goal had already been achieved. How about you just give him a hero title outright and do me a favor? Lee Yun still refused. The old man stood up and said meaningfully, he is very close to my ideal type. Lee Yun said that this was his first time evaluating an ordinary person, but that he would do his best. Meanwhile, Jae-rim was still laughing and joking around, completely unaware that he had already become a key observation target. Kim I-han hid behind them, full of doubt in his heart. Did Jae-rim really have the potential to become a hero? The next day, after returning to the company, Jae-rim started work as usual. With a serious expression, Kim I-han insisted on sticking close to Jae-rim, refusing to leave even half a step. Jae-rim was completely speechless. Why was this guy acting like such a clingy tag-along? Did he not have even a shred of personal boundaries? He reminded himself inwardly that today he absolutely had to keep a low profile and safely get through this stretch of ordinary daily life. He had already notified everyone in advance to enter office mode, so nothing should go wrong, right? Welcome, President, and welcome Mr. Kim I-han. Please come in. Kim I-han froze on the spot. This reception was way too grand. Wait, what are you pulling today? It wasn't like this before. Jay explained that this was actually their normal workflow, but office mode had not been activated for so long that Jae-rim had probably almost forgotten it. Jae-rim and Kim I-han stood side by side in front of the glass window, and the awkward atmosphere was almost solid. Kim I-han took a sip of coffee, then softly called Jae-rim's name, with a bit of hesitation in his tone. In the end, he still could not help asking whether employees lining up to welcome guests was company policy. Jae-rim hurriedly waved his hands in denial and forced himself to explain that everyone just wanted to leave a good impression in front of a hero. His mind was full of the disappointed look on his girlfriend's face. He was genuinely afraid she would misunderstand him as a terrible boss. Kim I-han burst into laughter after hearing that and smoothly helped him cover it up, saying that heroes were meant to be respected anyway, so Jae-rim could only laugh along awkwardly. Feeling guilty inside, he could only remind Kim I-han that he was just an ordinary citizen and could not really be counted as some kind of hero. Kim I-han seriously pointed at Jae-rim and emphasized that although he was still an ordinary person for now, if this were being graded as a hero assessment, then that sentence would deserve a point deduction. Jae-rim was utterly confused and had no idea what kind of scoring rules he was even talking about. Kim I-han clenched his fist and swore that he would do everything in his power to stop Jae-rim from becoming a hero, brimming with motivation. He kept rambling on about how Jae-rim needed to stay away from danger, but right now Jae-rim only wanted to get him out of the way as soon as possible. Suddenly, there was a knock on the office door. Siona walked in and handed over a document that needed a signature. Kim I-han instantly blushed. The moment Siona appeared, he became completely flustered. Jae-rim thought to himself that this should finally be enough to get this guy away from his side. He took the document, but his gaze stopped on a yellow sticky note, which read, regarding Z's unfinished business. The moment he saw that sticky note, he immediately remembered the past in which he had personally destroyed Z. Siona reminded Jae-rim that there was an external meeting today that required his personal attendance. So it's actually about Z? Interesting. Kim I-han immediately said that he was going too, and Jae-rim was startled on the spot. Was this guy really treating this place like his own home? Siona promptly stopped Kim I-han and said she had something she wanted to talk to him about. Siona said that she had already become a fan of Kim I-han, and asked whether he had time later to go have a cup of coffee together. No, I still have work right now. What work do you have? There's nothing here for you to do. Jae-rim was stunned too. This guy could actually resist even Q's charms. I have to stay by Jae-rim's side and also assess his. He got halfway through the sentence and suddenly became alert. Not good. Be careful. Kim I-han grabbed Jae-rim around the waist. What exactly are you trying to do? He locked onto the spot where the sniper might be, and a green light flashed through his eyes. But there was no sniper there at all. There was not even a person there, so he immediately felt awkward. Kim I-han, don't you think you should explain yourself? Kim I-hun could only laugh awkwardly and say that maybe it was just reflected light from the building opposite that made him misunderstand. The wind on the rooftop brushed past a corner of clothing as Lee Yun hid in the corner of the opposite building. That was close. I was almost discovered. But unexpectedly, from that point on, Kim I-hun only became even worse. He would snatch the meeting documents right out of Jerem's hands, saying that there might be razor blades hidden inside that could hurt someone. Because Jerem was too careless, he decided to deduct another 2 points from Jerem's hero score. Jerem originally wanted to have employees pretend to be fans and drag this annoying hero away. But once again, Kim I-hun stopped Jerem. Because Jerem had left his field of vision, he decided to deduct another point. Jerem's patience was already reaching its limit. He walked straight toward Kim I-hun. Kim I-hun said, Jerem, through this period of observation, I've discovered that you almost have no reaction to danger at all. That's a very serious problem. So he came to the conclusion that Jerem simply had no heroic awareness whatsoever. Jerem was completely speechless. Didn't I already say it before? I don't want to be a hero at all. He directly asked when this irritating assessment would finally end, because he had had enough. Kim I-hun was always barging into conference rooms and interrupting their meetings, and his fans were constantly blocking the entrance to the company, seriously affecting normal work operations. Maybe right now you should get out of my company. People should know their limits, don't you think? Only then did Kim I-hun realize what a huge mess he had caused, and he could only scratch his head awkwardly. Jerem adjusted his glasses. If you really do feel sorry, then don't interrupt the meeting this time. Just wait honestly. After walking into the meeting room, Jerem irritably complained about that guy he just could not shake off no matter what. He sighed. Even the fake fans he had arranged earlier had failed to keep the man occupied. Jay reassured Jerem, saying that this was a soundproof conference room, so there was no need to worry that anyone outside would hear. Jerem steadied his emotions and signaled for him to continue with the rest of the meeting. On the projection screen, information on the former #1 villain Z soon appeared. The materials mentioned his capable subordinate Y, the man who possessed teleportation abilities. We have already confirmed that Y will be conducting a dangerous smuggling deal at around 4 p.m. this afternoon. Jay also mentioned that someone was secretly supporting these already fallen villain remnants. The moment he heard that name, Jerem's pupils suddenly contracted. A faint smile slowly curled at the corner of his mouth, and he decided to personally step in and muddy the waters. But the problem was, what should he do about Kim I-hun? He simply could not shake him off. Outside the door, Kim I-hun was still cluelessly unaware that people were complaining about him. Suddenly, it was as if he remembered something. Tonight's dinner seems to be seafood soup, right? It's really been a long time since I had that. Just then, the sound of trays lightly clinking came from the corridor. He looked up and happened to meet Siona, who was walking over carrying tea and snacks, and his whole body instantly stiffened. Siona told him to have some tea first. Protecting Jerem all the time must be very tiring. Kim I-hun hurriedly waved his hands in refusal, but his cheeks still began heating up uncontrollably. Siona instead showed a slightly hurt expression and asked whether her presence made him uncomfortable. Kim I-hun completely panicked and quickly explained that he did not mean that at all. He was just working. Siona revealed a sweet smile. You're really very kind. Looking at the hand she extended toward him, Kim I-hun was so nervous that he was sweating all over. You really are a model hero, Kim I-hun. You've got some lint on your face. Kim I-hun froze slightly, and in the next second, he suddenly reacted, as though he had sensed some kind of change. He shoved open the door and rushed straight into the room. But the seat inside was already empty. Jerem had disappeared. He quickly walked to the glass window and looked down below. The white sedan downstairs had already driven away from the company. Finally got rid of that clingy pest. That was not easy. Kim I-hun leaned by the window and shouted Jerem's name, his voice full of urgency. Siona said from behind him, Boss just went out for work. That's normal. The conference room has an employee-only private elevator, so Boss probably left by elevator. Boss probably just forgot that I-hun was still here. Meanwhile, Jerem finally let out a sigh of relief. I finally shook him off. I need to leave immediately. Suddenly, his heart sank, and he instinctively looked up. In order to catch up with Jerem, Kim I-hun had actually jumped straight down through the broken window. What the hell are you doing? Wait, Jerem. I'm getting in the car. He crashed down heavily in front of Jerem's car, even cracking the ground. Was that really something a hero should do? Jerem, you're not getting away. The tone made it sound like he was chasing down a villain. Now Jerem's whole plan had been thrown into chaos by him. He yanked open the car door and even reminded Jerem not to forget about him, his bodyguard. Jerem said with a smile that he really had forgotten just now, but Kim I-hun said that since it was only the first day, that was understandable. In the end, Jerem could only helplessly start the car and head out with this guy tagging along. Jerem was irritated beyond belief and now only wanted to get rid of this hanger-on as quickly as possible. He noticed that a drone was following them in the sky, and Jae-rim thought that this was definitely something Jae had sent. Jae-rim called out to Kim I-han, "Let's talk about something emotional. Do you like Siona?" Looking at your reaction, something is obviously off. Jae-rim, what are you talking about? Even if I really were interested, I still can't show it during an escort mission. But Jae-rim had already realized that a honey trap might actually work. You haven't been using hero assessment as an excuse to come to my company every day just to see Siona, have you? Don't talk nonsense. I'm a decent person. He asked Jae-rim in return whether he knew what a hero evaluator was. They're inspectors from the Hero Association. These people don't just evaluate newcomers. Even active heroes cannot escape their review. If someone fails, they are stripped of qualification immediately, and eliminated heroes do not even have the right to resist. These people are the ones who truly hold power in the Hero Association. Kim I-han had originally wanted to properly explain all this to Jae-rim, but it turned out Jae-rim already knew quite a lot. He said that Jae-rim had already attracted the attention of the chief hero evaluator, and Jae-rim was shocked on the spot. I don't know either. Maybe father's suggestion back then made its way to the association. Jae-rim was about to go crazy. Didn't I already say it? I don't want to be a hero at all. Why are they forcing trouble onto me? Kim I-han knew that Jae-rim did not want to be a hero. He only wanted to live as an ordinary person. That was why he had been making such a fuss all this time, just to find as many reasons as possible to deduct points from Jae-rim. He had already done his best to persuade the council, constantly emphasizing that Jae-rim simply was not suited to become a hero. Hearing that, Jae-rim almost felt grateful to him. He hoped that both Jae-rim and Kim Hae-in could remain civilians forever. He had promised that he would definitely make that vision come true. The corner of Jae-rim's mouth lifted slightly, so he really had misunderstood him. The navigation instructed them to turn right, and the car slowly drove into an unfamiliar container yard. Jae-rim said they were almost there, but inwardly he was secretly regretting that everything was still too late. After the car stopped, Kim I-han still foolishly asked where exactly they had come to handle business this time, and why there were barely even any people around. Kim I-han looked around. The place was desolate beyond belief and did not look at all like somewhere people would come to hold meetings or conduct business. Suddenly, in the distance, he saw a group of figures carrying out a secret deal in the shadows. Kim I-han noticed the markings on the shipping crates and immediately sensed that something was wrong. Jae-rim said that maybe the navigation had led them to the wrong place this time, so they should get back in the car first. But the people in the shadows had already spotted them. Wai recognized the Hero Committee uniform at once and immediately ordered his men to move. At the same time, everyone raised their weapons and aimed at Kim I-han. Bullets poured down like a rainstorm. Just then, a surge of green energy came crashing in, instantly blasting off one man's arm. Every bullet was firmly caught by the barrier, and Kim I-han remained completely unharmed. Now, it's my turn to strike back. He let out a low roar, and in the next second, every bullet was reflected right back the way it came. Looking at his subordinates collapsing all over the ground, Wai instead showed a look of surprise. I remember you. Your name is Kim I-han, that useless fool from the Kim family. Jae-rim stood in the distance, coldly watching all of it. This was exactly the development he had wanted. Right now, these people were nothing more than chess pieces in his hands, killing each other. Kim I-han had just been about to tell Jae-rim to hurry and hide, but to his surprise, Jae-rim slammed on the gas and drove off. Since Kim I-han is already here, we'll just go straight to plan B. While this is happening, I'll go deal with the person behind Wai. This plan is absolutely perfect. Wai told Kim I-han not to lose focus. The real fight was only beginning now. Green energy began gathering at Kim I-han's fingertips, and a massive shockwave burst out instantly. But unexpectedly, Wai flashed behind him in an instant, driving his dagger straight down. I remember that resistance movement 8 years ago. Back then, you were still just a worthless little brat. In the next second, the dagger slammed into the barrier and shattered on the spot. Kim I-han touched the back of his neck. Your teleportation ability isn't actually that useful, is it? Instead, Wai himself was blasted backward by the barrier's recoil. He jumped up onto a shipping container, trying to widen the distance and look for another chance to strike. Kim I-han raised a hand and pointed at Wai. There's no ability in this world without limitations. You can only move yourself, can't you? Then that makes this simple. Wai coldly said that Kim I-han thought too highly of himself. If it weren't for the barrier generated by that watch, you'd be no match for me at all. Wai's dagger slashed viciously into the watch, and cracks spread across it in an instant. The moment Kim I-han looked down and saw the watch shatter, the other man's fist was already right in front of his face. Without the watch, Kim I-han immediately lost even his most basic means of self-defense. Wai burst into laughter. I will inherit Z's will. You'll die by my hand. Wai was the one who had inherited Z's terrifying will and legacy. But after Z was defeated, he too had been sent to prison, and at the time, he simply could not accept it. He could not believe that there could be another villain strong enough to defeat even Z, whom he had served all along. From that moment on, he began doubting his own beliefs, and he also became deeply confused about the executioner, J-Rim. Outside the Iron Gate, a guard called out to him. The man with a cigarette in his mouth said he could give him one more chance to make this world once again feel the fear once brought by the long-forgotten Z. Now, it's time to go deal with more heroes. He smashed Kim I-han hard into the ground, thinking the whole thing was laughably easy. He was certain that Kim I-han was already dead. Next, as long as he finished handling this batch of goods, this would become his new beginning. The new era of Z would arrive very soon. Is that really so? I don't think so. Green light suddenly exploded from his palm. Y had not expected Kim I-han to still be alive, and the power he was displaying at this moment had already gone completely beyond Y's understanding. Kim I-han said, "That all belongs to the past. What exactly are you villains still trying to do? But now that I've caught you, you'd better explain everything clearly. I'm no longer that stupid kid from back then. For years ago, I already became the head of security for the Kim family. I awakened a new ability and also gained a new title. Airshot, Kim I-han." Y only felt that he was putting on an act, but in the next second, green light exploded directly across his body, and he did not even have time to react. Kim I-han stepped on him with one foot. "Can you at least let me finish speaking before you make a move? Now, you should understand my strength, right?" Then Kim I-han took out his phone, preparing to call people over and arrest this escaped villain. But Y knew very clearly that he absolutely could not fall here. He still had unfinished business. On the phone, Kim I-han said that the J-Rim he was responsible for protecting was just a civilian, and also his niece's fiancé. A civilian son-in-law? So that's what this is. When Kim I-han turned around, he discovered that Y, who had been lying on the ground, had already teleported away and vanished without a trace. And at this moment, Y had already teleported into J-Rim's car, a sneer hanging on his face, while J-Rim seemed completely unaware. J-Rim asked, "Was the hero evaluator who was tailing me taken care of?" Jay said yes, it had already been handled, and now no one was following them anymore. He also said that not far from their transaction point, another team was hiding inside a warehouse. J-Rim was heading in that direction. Attacking Y had only been a surface move, his real target was someone else. What mattered most now was exposing the mastermind behind it all. At present, there were 3 legendary hero candidates, and their combat power ranked at the very top. And the target J-Rim was truly after was among those 3. He knew that someone had been secretly releasing villains from prison, but every clue seemed as though it had been deliberately wiped clean. Even Jay could not find out how those people had been let out. And the other side had barely even done anything, yet K had still managed to leave prison completely unharmed. Only after they pulled up the surveillance footage did they suddenly discover that the prison guard had been working all along for this strongest hero candidate. Now, J-Rim had also shaken off Kim I-han, and his next step was to go find that hypocritical hero. In the back seat, Y was still sneering. A civilian actually had no guard up at all. The moment he finished speaking, he prepared to take J-Rim hostage. But in fact, J-Rim had already noticed him long ago. "Who do you think the person standing before you is?" Y looked completely confused. Wasn't he supposed to be just a civilian? Why did this feel completely wrong? In the next second, J-Rim hurled Y straight out of the back seat, and the car window shattered explosively at the same time. "Can you stop getting in the way of my business? Since Kim I-han is your opponent, then go back obediently and keep fighting Kim I-han. Trash like you even dirtied my car. You will regret this. Now, J-Rim will make you pay." Y suddenly became sharply aware. The truth was that J-Rim himself was the executioner. He immediately foamed at the mouth and began playing dead on the spot, his mind completely blank. With a face full of disgust, J-Rim flung him aside. This whole farce was simply a waste of time. He asked Jay whether that Clinny guy was still chasing after them. Sure enough, just as he had expected, Kim I-han was heading straight toward them. "Then go give him a proper welcome and stop him from bothering me again." Jay agreed cleanly. Meanwhile, Kim I-han was running with all his might, with only one thought in his head. He absolutely could not let that guy hurt J-Rim. The scene shifts to 8 years ago. Back then, he could only stand there helplessly and watch the stretcher being pushed inside. The hospital corridor was completely empty. Kim I-han stood there alone, as if all the strength had been drained from his body. So now, Kim I-han absolutely did not want history to repeat itself. He activated his air burst and forcibly launched himself into the air. Very soon, he spotted J-Rim's car stopped motionless by the roadside. In the next second, Kim I-han landed near J-Rim's car. He staggered toward the damaged vehicle, completely unaware that danger was already closing in. A drone hovered in midair, and machine gun fire instantly rained down. That villain was still immersed in his dream of being a loyal soldier. But in the very next second, J-Rim slapped him awake with one hard smack. Clutching his burning cheek, he was both shocked and furious, with no idea what had just happened. "Who said you were allowed to sleep? Come on, let's talk business. From now on, you're one of my subordinates." No refusing. The more Y listened, the more wrong it sounded. Jaerim coldly told him that he had better obediently follow him, or he could be killed right now. At the same time, inside an abandoned warehouse, a blond man was idly toying with a glowing magical item, the firelight reflecting off the side of his face. His fingertips lightly brushed across that magic as he said calmly, "Time to wrap things up. It's only taken longer than I expected." This hero was Choi Youngwon, known by the alias Magician. Meanwhile, Jaerim still had questions for Y. "Speak, how exactly did you escape from prison and end up here?" Y also recognized Jaerim as the greatest villain boss of all, the executioner himself. "I'm your enemy, do you really think I'd tell you?" "Of course, boss. My name is Y, and I can't reveal my real name." Z, who toyed with those damned heroes and plunged the world into darkness, has now become a star in the sky. I cried my eyes dry in prison, and even the little bit of light outside the window became an impossible luxury. It was only when that figure appeared that I finally got the chance to escape. Jaerim told him to get to the point and stop speaking nonsense in that pink dialogue box. He hated pink. Y continued recalling that when he first came out of prison, everything before him felt unfamiliar. 8 years had passed, and the city had changed so much he could barely recognize it. He looked at the street-side voting boards covered with the faces of those heroes, and all he felt was anger. In his memory, this street should have been running with blood, but now even petty thieves dared swagger around. Did trash like that really deserve to rob people openly in the streets? And the heroes now looked weak enough to be laughable too. The guy in front of him had only unlocked some glowing ability, and already he was acting invincible. He strutted down the street making passersby unable to open their eyes, wanting everyone to submit to his light. Looking at that clownish display, Y was so angry his teeth nearly cracked. If Z were still here, how could this kind of trash possibly strut around in public? "So you mean I'm less intimidating than the old Z?" Y immediately apologized. At the time, he secretly took out the knife he carried with him, planning to teach those people a lesson. "If no one in this world is going to deal with them, then I'll personally clean up this trash." But just as he was about to move, Choi Youngwon suddenly appeared and startled him. Holding that glowing object, Choi Youngwon smiled and said that all of this was merely part of his performance. That thief simply rode away on his bike right in front of them. But in truth, he had already fallen under an illusion. In his eyes, a bottomless pit had suddenly appeared ahead. One hard break directly threw him flying off the bike. Choi Youngwon casually caught the stolen bag. Cheers immediately erupted all around them. The blonde hero magician had made his entrance. He turned his head and smiled at that villain. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." He was actually waiting for me. Why suddenly remember what the prison guard had said? So the one who had said he could help him was Choi Youngwon. Smiling, Choi Youngwon said to him, "It's a little messy here right now. How about we change locations and talk slowly somewhere else?" In the cafe, 2 drinks sat on the table, but the atmosphere was not relaxed in the slightest. Choi Youngwon said that this world had changed long ago. Ever since the executioner took over the villains, everything had fallen into disorder. As he wrote something down, he complained that the heroes were spending every day dealing with these trivial little matters, while the fans behind him were still swooning over him. He said that truly dangerous villains in the city had become fewer, but petty criminals had only grown more numerous. Choi Youngwon smiled and told Y not to worry about exposing his identity, because his face had already been hidden by an illusion. The entire cafe space had been distorted, and he said that this would make people feel more relaxed. That villain instantly understood. Back then, Choi Youngwon had used exactly this trick to drive his opponents insane little by little. He held his coffee, with something unreadable hidden in his eyes. So this is the oppressive aura of the legendary hero candidate Choi Youngwon? Y asked him why a lofty hero like him would choose to support someone like him, when everyone now called him one of the big 3. Choi Youngwon set down his coffee cup and said he knew that Y held the formula for the redemption drug left behind by Z. 8 years ago, during the period of Z's rule, this drug had been the ultimate weapon capable of infinitely amplifying superpowers. Y slammed his fist onto the table, unable to believe that the other man actually dared to set his sights on Z's legacy. But Choi Youngwon only smiled and said that he wanted Y to make the drug again and then distribute it. He explained that all of this was for the sake of his wedding. Looking at the gentle smile on his face, Y only felt a chill run down his back. "This is way too bizarre, going to all this trouble just for a wedding." My beloved said that if I can become the #1 hero in the Hero Association, she'll agree to marry me. Even Jaerim was speechless hearing that. What kind of absurd wedding reason was that? Y could only lie on the ground and tremblingly repeat this insane plan. Choi Youngwon handed over a gold card and promised that he would cover all manufacturing costs. With a smile, he told Y to build out the distribution network. Within the illusion of coins filling the sky, the only thing Y remembered was the 2-year deadline he had mentioned. Choi Youngwon said that in order to rise to #1, he needed more powerful villains, and this step was crucial. Wai clenched his fists and finally understood that he was nothing more than a stepping stone for the other man's climb upward. But in the end, he still accepted the gold card, because this had always been a transaction of mutual exploitation. So that was the story? J-Rim still felt that something about it was off. J-Rim asked him whether the drugs were what was inside these magnesium boxes, and Wai said he could not be completely sure. Yes, what's inside is the redemption drug. It was originally made by Z. Can you let me go now? In Wai's memory, the kind-hearted Z had once said that this was created to liberate villains, a drug capable of removing the side effects of superpowers. But in J-Rim's memory, the redemption drug back then had clearly caused severe poisoning. And in the end, the accumulating side effects had completely backfired on the users. But Z is already dead, so how did you make it? Because the core ingredients still exist, and that guy also decided to support me. In other words, as long as you complete today's transaction, you'll most likely see the magician somewhere nearby. If that's the case, then let's go right now. Hey, subordinate, did you hear that? I was originally planning to kill this guy directly, but I suddenly thought of something even more interesting. The scene shifted, and Choi Young-won was already dissatisfied with Wai being late. He hated unreliable partners the most. He asked Wai who the person he had brought was. Wai excitedly said that this was a hostage he had kidnapped. J-Rim immediately put on a trembling voice and called to Choi Young-won for help. Wai complained that while making the deal, he had happened to run into the Kim family's son-in-law eavesdropping. He even pretended to interrogate J-Rim, asking whether he had leaked any secrets. J-Rim hurriedly shook his head and said that he was just an ordinary civilian and had no desire to get involved in something like this. The moment the magician heard the words Kim family, his expression stiffened for an instant, as if he had immediately sensed something. J-Rim continued, saying that he and Kim I-han had originally been trying to stop them, but Kim I-han had already been defeated. On the surface, J-Rim acted innocent, but the bug hidden in his tie clip had already recorded everything. Choi Young-won is conspiring with villains right now, so as long as he sees me, he definitely won't be able to sit still. He has to protect his reputation as a hero, because I'm connected to the Kim family. So, he will definitely find a way to kill me. But to J-Rim's surprise, in the next second, Wai was hypnotized and raised his knife against himself. Wai's body began swaying uncontrollably. Choi Young-won instantly changed his face and instead accused him of daring to harm an innocent civilian. Only at that moment did Wai finally understand that from beginning to end, he had only been used and betrayed. Choi Young-won smiled and said that this kind of kidnapping was something he absolutely could not forgive. Wai let out a scream of despair. Even before dying, the name on his lips was still Z's, full of unwillingness and regret. Choi Young-won walked toward J-Rim and once again put on that heroic pose of rescuing a kidnapped civilian. He reached out to help J-Rim up and pretended to ask with concern whether he was hurt, while J-Rim had originally intended to release the recording on the spot and expose his attempt to silence him. Choi Young-won held J-Rim's hand and calmly admitted that he had been working undercover all along. He reassured J-Rim that everything was fine now, but this person was even more disgusting than J-Rim had imagined. Thank you. J-Rim really wanted to kill him right now. Jay in the monitoring room wanted to stop J-Rim, because he still could not expose himself yet. On the surveillance screen, Kim I-han was already hurrying this way. A blinding beam of strong light instantly made him realize something was wrong. Light that conspicuous was itself proof that trouble was about to happen. But the drone behind him was still continuing to follow Kim I-han. And right after that, the drone prepared to open fire on him directly. But at this critical moment, it suddenly ran out of battery. Kim I-han noticed it, raised his hand, and destroyed it in one blow. Jay in the monitoring room was dumbfounded. Now, they had no way to stop this man from continuing forward. But Jay pressed a button and activated the backup plan. A bug-shaped robot flew out of the damaged drone. But now it no longer had any attack capability and could only continue monitoring. Kim I-han seemed to suddenly think of something. He took out his phone, which had the location of J-Rim's watch on it. Jay had already started feeling that once he got back, the boss would definitely scold him. The mission to intercept Kim I-han had failed completely. Kim I-han strode toward J-Rim's location, and the insect robot also flew in the same direction. Choi Young-won was still pretending, saying that he had only been undercover and that everything had been part of the plan. J-Rim asked him whether he had come alone. He was already close to being unable to resist killing him. Choi Young-won gave him an affirmative answer and told J-Rim to leave with him immediately. He continued by saying that while undercover, he could endure anything, except for the kidnapping of innocent civilians. J-Rim had already begun gathering dark energy on his side, preparing to kill him, yet the man was still talking about the Kim family. Then he dropped a bombshell. J-Rim's girlfriend Kim Hae-in was actually not a member of the Kim family. Outside the warehouse, the circle of burly men were Wai's subordinates. They shouted, asking where Wai was. But Wei was already lying in a pool of blood. Choi Young-won could not be bothered to waste words on these goons. "This is a new magic spell I developed. Want to see it?" A burst of intense light instantly swallowed up the goons, and smiling, he draped an arm over Jerem's shoulder, signaling him to come along. At that moment, the insect robot flew into the old warehouse as well. The goons screamed while covering their eyes, their vision ruined by the blinding light. Choi Young-won smiled and said that this had originally been a surprise work he had prepared for Kim Hae-in. He did not hide his feelings for Kim Hae-in at all. He was pursuing her too. The fire in Jerem's heart was almost impossible to suppress now. This man actually dared to provoke him right to his face. It was unbearably arrogant. "So the masterpiece you mentioned is just blinding people? Are you planning to make Kim Hae-in blind too?" "Of course not. I'd only show it to her as a performance. I'd never actually use it on her." "What, are you jealous?" "Choi Young-won, don't you know that I'm Kim Hae-in's fiancé?" He smiled and explained that he was happy too that Kim Hae-in was finally getting married. It was truly something to celebrate. Meanwhile, Kim I-hun was still desperately rushing this way. Choi Young-won tried to change the subject and skirt around Jerem's bottom line, but clearly every single word he said stepped right on it. He even wondered aloud why Kim Hae-in had once told him to compete for the position of #1 hero. At the time, she even said that if I really became #1, she'd marry me. I actually believed her. With one slide, Kim I-hun rushed straight to the entrance. "Shut your filthy mouth, Choi Young-won." Choi Young-won was still in shock over Jerem's strength, and in the next second, he was thrown straight out. Jerem got on top of him and hammered him with punch after punch. "The person Kim Hae-in is going to marry is me." Yet Choi Young-won was still crazily asking, "Is there really no hope at all? Does that mean you never liked superpowered people in the first place? What exactly do I lack compared to this glasses guy?" At that moment, Kim I-hun arrived. "Wait, Jerem, are you really this fierce? This guy is a superpowered person." Jerem looked confused. "Didn't I tell Jay to stop Kim I-hun? But how did he even find this place? I already shook him off, didn't I? Jay didn't send him any message either, so how did he chase me here? Wait, isn't that Jay's flying device?" The insect robot traced a flight path in the air, trying to show that Jay had already done everything he could. Unfortunately, Jerem could not understand it at all. What exactly is it trying to say? Instead, Choi Young-won laughed. "This is way too interesting. Kim I-hun even came too. It's been a long time since I got beaten up." Before he could even finish speaking, Jerem's fist smashed into his face again. But the moment that punch landed, Jerem regretted it instantly, because he had used too much force, and directly fractured his own hand. Kim I-hun hurriedly asked Jerem if he was alright. He had already told him not to hit him. Jerem was furious and said that this bastard had dared to say that he wanted to marry Hae-in too. How could he possibly endure that? But in the very next second, the pain twisted his face as he said his hand was broken and they needed to call an ambulance quickly. Kim I-hun was still wondering inside whether it was really that serious. Why was he screaming like that? Meanwhile, the person who had been beaten was sitting there with a blank face and still looked mostly fine. But Jerem still wanted to hit him a few more times, only to be firmly held back by Kim I-hun. Choi Young-won held his face and laughed, for reasons no one could understand. The next day, the news began reporting that escaped convict Y, during his kidnapping of the Kim family's future son-in-law, had been defeated jointly by Kim I-hun of the Kim family and Choi Young-won of the Choi family, and that the hostage had been successfully rescued as well. Lying in his hospital bed and listening to this completely black and white reverse news report, Jerem could only think that things had not happened that way at all. His girlfriend Kim Hae-in called Jerem's name worriedly. Jerem raised his plaster-cast hand and smiled, saying it was fine, just a minor injury. Of course, even he himself had never expected that one day he would personally punch his own hand into a fracture. She immediately threw herself into his arms, crying that there was no way this could count as fine. Jerem could only awkwardly pat her back, even his attempt at comforting her seeming weak. As she wiped her tears, she blamed herself, saying that all of this was because of her family. Jerem hurriedly waved his hand. "A few days in the hospital and I'll be fine. It has nothing to do with your family." His future father-in-law and mother-in-law also arrived, carrying fruit in their hands, their faces full of anxiety. But the moment they entered and saw the cast on Jerem's hand, their expressions changed instantly. His future mother-in-law exploded on the spot and directly declared that she would tear the person who hurt him limb from limb. Both of them said they would pursue whoever had hurt Jerem all the way to hell. Actually, there's really no need. This is way too exaggerated. I wasn't injured by one of Z's old followers. Everything was just an accident. After all, this injury was caused by my own impulsiveness. It wasn't part of the plan in the first place. Jerem suddenly realized that this accident might actually become an opportunity to drive a wedge between the Choi family and the Kim family. It was indeed a good idea, but he still had not figured out what kind of lie he should tell. At that moment, Choi Young-won walked in through the door with a girl beside him. Kim Young-sik froze, having no idea what the other man was doing here. Choi Young-won was still smiling as he said it. Excuse the intrusion. I didn't expect everyone to be here. Jae-rim stared at him fixedly, with only one thought in his mind. What was this bastard doing here? Had he still not been beaten enough? People came and went through the hospital lobby, and rumors spread everywhere along with them. Kim Hae-hyun happened to overhear people nearby discussing whether someone might actually be that hero in person. Only then did he suddenly notice that Kim Hae-hyun was sitting on the chair beside him with his head lowered in a daze. He called out to Kim Hae-hyun, but it was as if the other man had not heard him at all. He sat there stiffly, muttering something under his breath. Helplessly, he held his head in his arms, full of regret. As a hero, he had actually failed to protect even his future nephew-in-law. It was too pathetic. The nephew beside him scratched his head helplessly, never expecting this matter to hit him this hard. Usually, Kim Hae-hyun was always full of enthusiasm at work and seemed cheerful too. But once his emotions dropped to rock bottom, he shut himself away completely and could not hear anything anyone said. Kim Hae-hyun was even feeling thankful that Choi Young-won had been undercover, because otherwise the consequences would truly have been unimaginable. The moment his nephew Kim Hae-hyun heard Choi Young-won's name, his expression changed instantly. He grabbed Kim Hae-hyun and headed toward the hospital room. That man was dangerous. He felt the same way Jae-rim did and believed Choi Young-won was a complete bastard through and through. There was no way he would miss a chance to see Jae-rim. He would definitely come cause trouble. The hospital room door was pushed open, and Choi Young-won walked in. No one had expected that he would come to see Jae-rim too. Smiling, he said that he had not expected to see Kim Hae-hyun today as well. He praised Hae-hyun for getting prettier every day, and Kim Hae-hyun politely thanked him for saving her fiancé. Kim Hae-hyun had originally thought that he would honestly stay home and rest, considering he too had been beaten badly the day before. Watching them chat back and forth like that, Jae-rim suddenly felt as if he himself had no presence at all. Choi Young-won said that he and Kim Hae-hyun had always had a good relationship, which made Jae-rim feel that he really needed to ask about that in person later. Choi Young-won asked in return why the other side was being so guarded against him. Kim Hae-hyun lowered her head and said nothing, but her eyes were as cold as ice. Kim Young-sik asked him whether he had come here to go through hospital admission procedures as well. Smiling, he said that he was only here to conduct a small test. I'm a little curious right now. Does Jae-rim really have the qualifications to become the Kim family's future hero? Is this lunatic trying to kill me right in front of everyone? Just as the blade was about to fall, a streak of green light suddenly restrained the woman. She raised her eyes, and the killing intent in them was chillingly clear. His future mother-in-law used her power and forcibly stopped the murder attempt. What exactly are you trying to do, you brat? Are you tired of living? At this moment, a barrier had already risen in front of Jae-rim and Kim Hae-hyun, cutting off all harm. Kim Hae-hyun and Kim Hae-hyun arrived at the scene just in time to see what had just happened. Kim Hae-hyun stepped forward one step at a time and directly questioned Choi Young-won, asking whether he was trying to attack an ordinary person. His future mother-in-law, Choi Hui, spoke coldly. Was this the Choi family's idea in sending you here? He only smiled faintly and casually snapped his fingers. Sitting by the window, he said with an easy expression, "Everyone, don't be so tense. We're all good people. I only wanted to test Jae-rim and see whether he has what it takes to become a hero. This was merely an evaluation." The two people outside the door looked utterly baffled and completely could not keep up with this absurd turn of events. But based on that reaction alone, he had already sufficiently proven that Jae-rim was absolutely no ordinary person. With a hint of amusement, he pressed closer and directly asked what Jae-rim's power really was. Jae-rim stammered and could not answer, so nervous he was almost suffocating. Kim Hae-hyun raised a hand and placed it on Choi Young-won's shoulder, telling him not to ask any more. Now you can get the hell out. This bastard isn't welcome here. Choi Young-won brushed Kim Hae-hyun's hand aside and said that he had only not seen him for too long, though he did indeed look rather nervous. He was tactful enough to turn and leave, saying that this really was not a suitable place to keep talking and that they would meet again next time. The scene shifted, and Choi Young-won walked into a mysterious laboratory glowing with an eerie blue light. A researcher in a white lab coat came toward him and said directly that she had already seen the news reports. Even now, she still did not understand why the plan with Y had suddenly changed. She had originally wanted to test whether Y could become a qualified experimental sample, but she had already guessed that Choi Young-won had probably given up on Y as an ability user. Choi Young-won could not help complaining that the lab was too dark, making them look like some kind of villains hiding in the shadows. He lightly asked who that person called Y even was. The person beside him reminded him that it was the ability user he had personally killed today. Choi Young-won smiled and said that he always forgot worthless things as soon as he turned his head. After all, that ability user had never met his standards for a collection anyway, and his power was unstable too. The researcher smiled helplessly, clearly already used to his cold-bloodedness. She directly pointed out that the injury on Choi Young-won's face could not possibly have been caused during his fight with Y. Just then, his phone suddenly rang. He casually tossed the phone into the glass of water in front of him. But the phone kept vibrating in the water, and the caller ID read leader. He helplessly fished the phone back out and responded to the call in a calm tone. He said the injury on his face had all been thanks to an interesting little liar. He gave a light laugh, his tone full of disdain, and said that seeing through lies was far too easy for him. But rather than killing him directly, he wanted more to personally test him once and completely tear away Jerem's disguise. The researcher suggested that they might as well send a gift over too. That's a good idea. Meanwhile, Jae-rim told Kim Hae-in to go get some rest first, but she seemed as if she still had something she wanted to say. Outside the hospital room, her family had already arranged guards, and Jae-rim told her not to worry about his safety. He told her that she had been frightened today and should go relax first. Just as Kim Hae-in was about to leave, Jae-rim suddenly wanted to ask her something. He asked Kim Hae-in whether she and Choi Young-won were actually very close, because they seemed quite familiar. But Jae-rim knew very clearly that in fact they did not really seem close at all. He quickly laughed it off and said that hadn't Choi Young-won also said he wanted to perform magic for her? She tilted her head in confusion and asked, "Magic?" She had turned off all phone notifications, and only now did she see that Choi Young-won had sent her an entire screen full of messages. Only after Jae-rim looked through their chat history did he discover that Kim Hae-in had barely replied to him at all. "This Choi Young-won, I thought there was something ambiguous between you two, but it turns out he's basically just a stalker." Kim Hae-in leaned close to Jae-rim's ear and softly told him a bombshell piece of news. The scene flashes back to several years ago, when her grandfather once had a direct confrontation with the person in power in the Choi family. That conflict directly brought an end to the many years of cooperation between the two families. She also recalled that when she was 6 years old, she and Choi Young-won may have had a very brief crossing of paths, but she did not continue. She only waved at Jae-rim, then left. At dusk, the Kim family sat down together, preparing for a meeting. Now, they had to do everything in their power to make sure this future son-in-law would not get hurt again, even if it meant falling out with the Choi family once more. Meanwhile, Jae-rim called his subordinate Jae and asked how things were progressing on his side. On a highway under the night sky, a truck was speeding along. Suddenly, a person wearing a bear mascot head appeared ahead and stood directly in its path. The driver recognized at a glance that this was someone from the executioner team. He did not even get the chance to beg for mercy before red tentacles were about to take him out on the spot. Jae pulled open the rear door of the truck. It turned out that inside the truck was Y, who had already been defeated, and surprisingly, he was still alive. Jae said that the man had already seen the executioner's face, so logically he should not be left alive. But he still asked boss how this should be handled next. The corner of Jae-rim's mouth lifted slightly into a cold smile. He had come up with a new idea again. Moonlight fell into the room, where Kay was lying asleep on the sofa. Even in his dreams, he was still thinking about when everyone would finally come back. Kay was an executive in the largest villain organization, the executioner team. By day, they disguised themselves as a cleaning company, and on the surface they were cleaning up real-world trash. But in reality, what they cleaned up were rotten politicians, hypocritical heroes, and scum who should never have been allowed to keep living. That bloodstained mask had once been one of the most terrifying symbols in the entire city. But now, he had turned into a dog and infiltrated a hero household to gather intelligence. And every day he had to avoid Kim Hae-in, so that he would not actually end up getting put on a dog leash. Because Kay knew very well that once he was leashed, his range of movement would be severely restricted. As for why he had ended up in such a miserable state today, it all had to start from that day. That day, Kay was staying in the hero's house and holding an online meeting with the upper ranks of the executioner team. Through the screen, one of his colleagues started by scolding him harshly, demanding to know why Kay had failed to protect the boss. Q told Kay not to explain, because the sound of barking on his end was already giving her a headache. They had been calling and messaging Kay the whole time, but Kay had not given a single response. Kay explained that his current mission was to keep wagging his tail to please people while continuing to gather intelligence. His phone was clearly sitting right beside him, but he did not even have the right to touch it. Kay said speechlessly that he spent every day pretending to be a dog and playing along with them, so were they seriously expecting him to unlock a phone with dog paws? That was too much. They kept pressing him about the boss's injuries, and Kay said the man was still in the hospital and would probably be out in a few days. Jay could not help saying that even if boss was trying to hide his identity, he really did not have to take it this far. Getting mixed up with the Kim family really was too unreliable. Maybe it was time to properly take care of a few of them and teach them a lesson. But Kay remembered that boss had previously said that everything had to wait until after the wedding. He said that he still had other things to deal with, so he prepared to end the meeting. Because in this infiltration mission, He had been pretending to be a dog a little too convincingly, and as a result there were details he had failed to notice in time. So now, he decided to go check on the boss and confirm how Jae-rim was doing in the hospital. "I'm coming to find you, boss." But at that moment, he spotted the hero Kim I-han in the living room. Kim I-han was sitting stiffly in a chair, unmoving, as though lost in thought. Wasn't he supposed to be out on patrol? Why is he slacking off at home? I need to sneak away quickly. But at that exact moment, Kim I-han noticed the movement and turned to look at Kay. Kay resigned himself to his fate and could only stand there looking at him innocently like a real dog. But Kim I-han's reaction was completely different from what Kay had expected. He actually started bleeding from the nose, and his whole face turned red. Kay instantly got an idea and decided to use the excuse of going out for a walk to run away the moment he got outside. "Don't kiss me. Get your mouth away from me. That's disgusting." Suddenly, another hero, Kim Hae-hyun, scooped Kay up and told Kim I-han to stop fooling around. He even gave Kay the name Alexander III, then decided to take him out for a walk personally. Kim I-han looked so aggrieved he was almost about to cry. "You won't even let me play with the puppy?" As Kim Hae-hyun put a leash on Kay, he glanced at the gloomy Kim I-han beside him. Right now, Kay is secretly thrilled. He can finally go outside. But to make sure another accident like Jae-rim's would not happen again, Kim Hae-hyun also planned to prepare some self-defense equipment for Kay. Kay immediately got a bad feeling, sensing that it was probably some absurd invention again. Meanwhile, Jae-rim was lying in his hospital bed, letting his girlfriend Kim Hae-in feed him, while she asked what he was thinking about and why he seemed so tense. Jae-rim said it was nothing. He turned to look out the window. People were guarding him all the time now, so he had no way to assign tasks to his subordinates or check on their progress, and he did not know whether something unexpected might happen. On the street, passers-by saw a hero walking a little dog outside. Kim Hae-hyun had even made Kay a little B-shaped backpack, and somehow it actually looked kind of cute. But just then, a dark figure hid in the corner, staring fixedly at this hero and his dog. She planned to kill the hero's dog first, just to deal the hero a small blow. The locations of everyone in the Kim family had already been exposed, and now was the best chance to strike. This was the perfect moment to make a move. She knew she could not beat the Kim family members, so she set her sights on the dog instead. Then, to top it off, she actually pulled out the redemption drug from her bag, intending to use it to strengthen her power. Suddenly, screams from the crowd erupted behind Kay and Kim Hae-hyun. Purple liquid monsters fell from the sky and began chasing innocent civilians fleeing for their lives. It turned out that the villain had launched an attack using her ability. Kay was still excited, thinking he could finally use the chaos to escape, but in the next second, he slammed headfirst into a protective barrier. Those liquid monsters were all tightly trapped inside Kim Hae-hyun's barrier as well. He told the civilians to evacuate immediately, while he prepared to deal with the villain himself. He took out a weapon he had designed himself, but deep down he knew that his role had always been support and protection, not direct combat. The purple liquid monsters crashed down overwhelmingly, making his figure look especially slight among them. In the next second, a streak of green light fell from the sky and pierced straight through the monsters. Kim I-han said he had originally come out to help patrol anyway, and had not expected to really run into danger. The monsters pressed in from all directions. Kim I-han said that continuing to sit on the side wallowing in self-pity would change nothing. Now he wanted to pull himself back together through action, and also use this fight to sharpen himself again. Kay noticed that this barrier could not possibly last forever, but he still did not know under what conditions it would fail. After dealing with a large number of liquid monsters, both of them collapsed onto the ground in exhaustion. Kim I-han talked about training seriously, but before long, he suddenly sensed that something was wrong, as though something was missing. By the time they realized it, Kay had already run off without a trace. That crazy woman had not been defeated at all. She laughed as she snatched Kay away. Only then did Kay realize that the protective barrier kept weakening with distance. What a chance! Kay slammed into that villain, then turned and ran. "I'm finally free." As he sprinted wildly, he thought that he needed to hurry and find a place to turn back into human form before going to see boss. But in the next second, he crashed straight into someone's arms. Kay collided headfirst into the arms of a girl sitting on a swing, and she cried out in surprise. She mistook Kay for a lost puppy and hugged him tightly. Only then did Kay realize he had actually run in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, Kim I-han was anxiously grabbing at his hair. Right now they did not even know where that little dog might have run off to. At that moment, a voice suddenly came from behind them. The newcomer asked whether they could help give him directions, because he was lost. The knight, one of the top 3 heroes, calmly asked while holding a sword whether they were willing to help. During the resistance movement 8 years ago, the knight had still been a civilian, yet he single-handedly defeated 27 villains. It was because of that battle that he entered the list of strongest hero candidates. The 2 Kim family members were both visibly stunned when this powerhouse suddenly appeared. He looked down at the monster liquid in his hand and said lightly that they must have had a lot of fun just now. Kim Il-han said, "This area isn't under your jurisdiction, is it? Why are you interfering?" "You're right, but for me. I'm just lost, that's all. I already said that." "Really?" They both felt that the knight was messing with them on purpose. He asked the Kim family members whether there was some amusement park or somewhere nearby to relax, saying he had simply come out for a walk. Kim Hae-hyun was still sighing to himself, because during the resistance movement back then, the man had definitely not been this absent-minded. Meanwhile, the girl was holding Kay and rubbing her face against his fur. "Puppy, come stream with me. Let my followers see such a cute puppy too." She said her name was Eula, and that in the future she wanted to become the next generation of hero and help more people. But for now she just wanted to take good care of this little dog first, because it was simply too cute. "No, I need to go find boss. Let me go, you evil little girl." Then in the next second, Kay slammed headfirst into the railing. "Oh no, puppy." Immediately after that, a loud crash rang out. Through his blurred vision, the little girl's face appeared. Eula caught Kay steadily and anxiously asked whether he was hurt. Eula sighed in relief, glad that the little dog had not been injured. But at that moment, the villain caught up to them and prepared to deal with the little girl too. She told the girl to hand over the dog, and maybe she would spare her life. Kay felt a jolt of shock. He had never expected the other side to catch up this quickly. Right now, he only wanted to get away from this little girl immediately, then hurry and find a place to turn back into a human and avoid being hunted. The villain coldly warned the girl to hand over the dog right away, or she would definitely regret it. But Eula held Kay tightly in her arms and refused without hesitation. She loudly said that Kay was not a pet but a companion, and that she would never hand him over to someone who did not understand that bond. Those words completely enraged the villain. Kids these days really are getting more and more self-righteous. They don't even listen to adults anymore. Thick purple slime began to churn slowly. "I already warned you, little girl." In the next second, the purple slime turned into a hideous monster and lunged straight at them. "It's okay, little puppy. I'll protect you." At that moment, Kay suddenly felt something familiar, the same kind of gentleness he had experienced once before. The purple monster opened its huge, bloody mouth, and Eula squeezed her eyes tightly shut. The danger alarm was triggered, and the system inside instantly awakened. Protection mode activated in an emergency, and the machine gun hidden inside the bee backpack popped out immediately. The purple monster's movement suddenly froze. Why was a small dog carrying something this dangerous? The machine gun opened fire instantly. Kim Hae-hyun was still on his way over, but he had already detected that the alarm had been triggered. The barrage erupted in full force in the next second, and the violent explosion blasted the enemy away on the spot. The huge noise exploded through the entire street, and even Kim Hae-hyun was stunned by the sight. The two of them looked at the smoke-filled scene, and neither had expected the weapon's power to be this absurd. Kim Hae-hyun could not help saying that it seemed the weapon he made was, after all, somewhat useful. Passers-by nearby rushed over after hearing the blast and gathered around, staring at the sudden explosion. The girl raised Kay high in the air and loudly announced that this puppy had saved her life, instantly causing an uproar at the scene. The girl's eyes were firm. She had already made up her mind to keep Kay by her side and protect him from now on. Kim Il-han scratched his head. The dog obviously was not hers, but how exactly was he supposed to say that out loud? "This dog is ours, so could you please first?" The little girl refused on the spot, saying that she had already decided to name the puppy Maxim 3, and that from now on the dog belonged to her. This was completely unreasonable. The scene shifted to the hospital. Jae-rim was talking with Grandpa, discussing something important. Grandpa placed a box on the table, as if preparing to show Jae-rim something. He opened the box and asked whether Jae-rim was willing to undergo self-defense weapon training. Inside the box lay a high-tech weapon glowing with green light. The moment Jae-rim saw the weapon, he froze. "So what exactly is this, Grandpa? I've never seen anything like it before. And whether I want to accept weapon training is something I still can't decide." Jae-rim said very directly that he had no interest in this kind of training and could not just agree casually. Because he had no idea why the other side suddenly wanted to hand him a weapon that so obviously had considerable destructive power, so he absolutely could not nod lightly. His girlfriend Kim Hae-in slowly spoke, saying that she originally had not agreed with letting civilians take part in weapon training either. She picked up the weapon and seriously urged Jae-rim to at least try the training, if only to learn how to protect himself. Looking at how stiffly she said it, Jae-rim could not help complaining that her persuasion was really not convincing at all. Grandpa sat on the sofa, secretly delighted, relieved that his granddaughter was actually helping persuade Jae-rim for him. His thoughts drifted back to that family meeting. That night, everyone gathered in the shop, and an impromptu family meeting officially began. Kim Young-sik first raised the question of why Choi Young-won had said that Jae-rim was not a civilian at all. Kim Il-han recalled the scene he saw at the old warehouse. At that time, Jae-rim pinned Choi Young-won down with a single punch. Kim Young-sik was full of shock and simply could not believe that Jae-rim could take Choi Young-won down head-on. Kim Hae-in also broke into a cold sweat, never expecting that an ordinary person could actually injure him. They all thought that even many heroes might not be able to do that so easily, but Kim Hae-in did not think so at all. Everyone was baffled and had no idea why she would reach that conclusion. But Kim Hae-in felt this was perfectly normal and not strange at all. Dad, Kim Young-sik, is already one of the 3 top candidates for strongest hero, so of course he's very strong. And Hae Hyunappa fought Choi Young-won before too, and at the time they were basically evenly matched. Her father explained that he was too strong to be any useful point of comparison, while her brother said that the robot had done most of the work that time, and that if they had really fought hand-to-hand, he would not have won. Her mother, Choi Hui, helplessly pressed a hand to her forehead and sighed that her daughter was surrounded by heroes, so she had long since started treating these things as everyday normality. Everyone hung their heads and said that the child simply had no idea what normal even meant. But if this is true, doesn't that mean Jae-rim's talent for becoming a hero is astonishingly high? Grandpa found a seat and sat down. He frankly admitted that he had actually already sent people to secretly observe Jae-rim. But unexpectedly, something went wrong in the middle. He revealed a shocking piece of news. The evaluator responsible for observing him was now critically injured and close to death. He suspected that the person had most likely been attacked by Y or some other villain. Of course, when Grandpa sent the evaluator there, it was also partly to protect Jae-rim and keep him from getting hurt. But even so, things still turned out like this. He knew very clearly that what they needed now was not simply to add more guards. So Grandpa naturally proposed a suggestion: let Jae-rim undergo formal weapon training. Kim Hae-in lowered her head. She understood the logic, but emotionally she still could not let it go. With a serious expression, she warned Grandpa that if Jae-rim got hurt because of his ambition, she would resent him for the rest of her life. But Grandpa was secretly pleased inside. He had finally waited for his granddaughter's tacit approval, and right now he was full of satisfaction. Jae-rim hesitantly asked, "So I just have to activate this weapon simply like that?" while feeling uneasy inside. Kim Hae-in explained that this was actually just an ordinary stun gun. Then in the very next second, the weapon directly shattered the room's glass window. The two of them froze on the spot. Grandpa merely nodded calmly and praised Jae-rim, saying that his performance just now had been very good. He struck while the iron was hot and directly suggested that once Jae-rim was discharged from the hospital, he would personally conduct the weapon training. Kim Hae-in exploded on the spot and angrily accused Grandpa of lying to her, saying this was supposed to be just an ordinary stun gun. "Alright, don't be angry. We can let him go to the armory and pick one with a little less power instead." A few days later, Jae-rim was finally discharged from the hospital. Several of them were riding together in the car, and Kim Hae-in let out a sigh of relief, saying that he had been discharged earlier than expected. Jae-rim looked down at his phone, thinking that he had not acted in a long time and still had a pile of things waiting to be dealt with. After opening his messages, he saw an urgent notice sent by the security director. "What is this, Kay? What are you causing this time?" That livestream video had exploded online, with views surpassing 300,000. The comment section was full of praise, and some people were even saying that even the Kim family's dog had become a hero. A huge number of gifts had been sent over, and the recipient was actually this hero puppy, Kay. As soon as the car stopped at the house, they saw that piles of packages had already filled the space in front of the entrance. Kay was surrounded by gift boxes, and inside were not only cute clothes but even entire cartloads of dog food. Jae-rim adjusted his glasses and stared across at him. What exactly had he gotten himself into this time? Kay swallowed guiltily, sweating nervously all over. Thinking back to just now, when they were about to bring the puppy back, Eula had turned and run. Kim Hae-hyun had been about to chase after her, but suddenly someone pressed a hand on his shoulder. The knight stopped him and signaled for him to calm down first. The knight seriously said that he would protect the child himself, and that this matter should be left to him. Kim Hae-hyun looked utterly stunned, completely unable to understand what he meant by protect. He was also surprised that someone as powerful as the knight would concern himself with such a small matter on the street. The knight explained the reason. That girl was the only daughter of the president of Jiangsu Pharmaceutical Group, and her status was very special. The moment Kim Hae-hyun heard that, he was shocked. He had never expected that she was actually the daughter of a major corporation. But the problem was, why would a child like that run out alone? The scene changes, and the little girl is crouching in a corner holding the puppy. Kay only wanted to go see his boss, yet things kept taking one turn after another. The girl hugged the puppy sadly and said that apart from this dog and her fans, no one cared about her at all. She cautiously asked whether the puppy could go with her. "Hello there, little miss." The knight's voice suddenly interrupted her. "Come back with me. It's getting late, and we should be going home." Kay instantly recognized that the person before him was one of the three great heroes, and he froze on the spot. He jumped out of the little girl's arms and ran straight to the knight. He bared his teeth and growled at the knight, but in his heart, all he wanted was to tear him apart. The knight also noticed that this little dog clearly did not like him. Under the evening sun, the little girl held the puppy tightly in her arms. She quickly spoke up and told the puppy not to behave like that toward Mr. Knight. At a glance, the knight saw through the truth and said that this puppy actually had an owner. Then he launched into a lecture, scolding the girl for secretly drugging herself unconscious and taking away someone else's dog without permission. The girl nearly broke down from being scolded and shouted that she was scared. But the knight said no more, picked up the puppy, and prepared to return it to its real owner. Afterward, Kim Hae-hyun explained that Jong-soo had sent a large number of gifts as thanks for the puppy saving their daughter. Sitting on the sofa and holding the puppy he had finally gotten back, Jae-rim fell into a brief silence. Kim Hae-hyun excitedly rummaged through the cute clothes in the gift boxes, and said that the pharmaceutical company had even donated money to the Hero Association. Some people had even suggested that the puppy should go straight into commercial advertising, and this string of situations gave Jae-rim a headache. Kim Hae-hyun could not help scolding the two of them, saying that during the days Jae-rim had been hospitalized, they had not even been able to keep an eye on one little dog. The two of them looked pitiful after being scolded, nearly in tears, full of guilt. But they still would not give up, and kept trying to persuade Jae-rim to let the puppy shoot commercials. Jae-rim, however, calmly refused and said that he had already found a suitable new owner for the puppy. The moment everyone present heard those words, the whole room fell silent. Kim Hae-hyun completely lost control emotionally, wildly pounding on the door and shouting Jae-rim's name. Standing outside Jae-rim's door, he kept knocking and saying he wanted to talk to him properly. Kim Hae-hyun was almost in tears, begging him to think it over seriously one more time. The others could not help sighing as well. The puppy going to a warm new home was of course a good thing, but those heroes still had a mountain of official duties to deal with. Choi Wee also felt full of disappointment. Even knowing it was the best arrangement, parting still hurt. The camera shifts to Jae-rim's room, where it is clear the matter is far from over. As an assassin, one was supposed to remain low-key and hidden. That was the most basic rule. Kay lowered his head and admitted fault, acknowledging that he had been too high-profile this time and had violated the principles of an infiltration mission. He knelt on the ground to apologize, while Jae-rim coldly gave the order, "The undercover mission ends completely here. From here on, you have a new assignment. I want you to expose every dirty secret Choi Young-won has." Kay immediately pulled himself together, smiling as he accepted the order and resolved to carry out this new mission well. At 2:25 in the morning, a message suddenly popped up on the phone. The distribution network for the redemption pills had been identified. New intelligence came in as well, uncovering a suspicious organization connected to Choi Young-won. Jae-rim decided to dig first into one key group, a cult called Baiwon Church. The scene changes again. A redemption pill slowly rolled across a stone platform, glowing with an eerie light. The sound of steady footsteps slowly approached, and the blue-haired man immediately stood up and warmly greeted the newcomer. The knight appeared holding the little girl's hand, and the man excitedly addressed her as the Holy Maiden. The little girl's expression was cold, showing no interest whatsoever in the person before her. The next day, Jae-rim finally prepared to go back to work at the company after a long time. Kim Hae-in had even specially prepared a discharge gift for Jae-rim. Jae-rim looked at the bracelet, not quite understanding it at first. And Kim Hae-in explained, "I heard this is a wish bracelet, and what it means is that I hope you'll stay healthy and safe from now on." The person responsible for Jae-rim's safety today had changed to Kim Hae-hyun. On the way to work, should we drop Alexander off with his new owner? Because there's an employee at the company who isn't allergic to dogs and said they want to keep him. I'm taking him along on the way. And besides, we already held a farewell party yesterday. I think it's better to send him away sooner, before everyone gets even more attached to him. But in reality, the mission Kay had truly received was to destroy Choi Young-won. After hearing that, Kim Hae-hyun could only say that although it was hard to let go, there was nothing else to be done. Still, Jae-rim, before we go to the company, could you come with me somewhere first? The scene changes. Jae-rim never could have expected that Kim Hae-hyun would bring him to the Hero Association's research lab. It turned out that Kim Hae-hyun was worried that Jae-rim did not have enough equipment on him to protect himself at all. There were long gloves here that could reflect any attack, high-performance goggles that could sense killing intent, and high-speed running shoes best suited for escaping. If you equip all of these, your safety will be much more secure. The moment he saw this equipment, Jae-rim immediately bowed and thanked him. He had not expected that Kim Hae-hyun would bring him into such an important place. This was practically a perfect opportunity. He immediately released Kay, who had been hidden in his pocket in the form of a hamster, and told him to scout the internal layout of the lab. Watching Kay quietly leave, Jae-rim knew very clearly that today would definitely bring good gains. but in the next second, a baseball grazed past Jerem's hair and slammed heavily into the wall behind him. It turned out that at some point, Grandpa had appeared here too. "Today, I'm going to personally train your defense." Only then did Jerem realize he had been tricked, and he immediately turned to slip away. But Grandpa clearly had no intention of giving him that chance. Kay observed the inside of the lab from within the ventilation ducts. Just then, two people happened to pass below, complaining as they walked that Kim Hae-hyun had brought another outsider in again. Kay had not expected that he would get to overhear gossip too. Apparently even those popular heroes got complained about by their own subordinates behind the scenes. Just then, another female researcher arrived, bringing a little girl with her. The moment Kay saw that little girl, he was startled. Wasn't this the same girl he had run into before? At the same time, a group of unwelcome visitors had also arrived outside the research lab. "So it's raining, but whatever. Today, I'm going to kill every bastard who turned me into what I am now. Let's begin." The moment those words fell, everyone looked up and saw a figure standing on a tree. It was none other than Lee Yoon, the chief evaluator of the Hero Council. In the next second, that figure vanished into thin air, then grabbed one of the villains and demanded to know who their boss was. Right after that, he flung the man away with one hand. "Talking nonsense with small fry like you is just a waste of time." Another enemy immediately activated his power and began controlling blue crystals. Countless crystals tore through the rain and shot straight toward Lee Yoon. Lee Yoon had already determined that the other side was aiming for his neck and abdomen. His body instantly turned intangible, and he emerged completely unharmed. Those blue crystals passed straight through his body. Another villain immediately warned his companion to stop using magic-type attacks. He said this time they would use their fists directly and see how this chief evaluator would dodge that. In the next second, he came killing through the air wrapped in thunderous power. Leon saw at a glance that the other man was aiming for his face. That meant now it was his turn to strike back. He swung his fist fiercely and hit the incoming enemy head-on, unleashing explosive force on the spot. The man was blasted away by the blow. "From what I can see, not a single one of you can really fight. The only thing I want to know now is who your boss really is." But very quickly, he sensed that something was wrong. Someone on the other side had activated a completely different ability. One of the villains slowly opened his palm, revealing an eye hidden in his hand. The scene cuts to the training area, where Jae-rim is training with Grandpa and Kim Hae-hyun. Kim Hae-hyun bent down to comfort Jae-rim and asked whether the training was too difficult, while Jae-rim deliberately put on an expression as if he were suffering badly. Grandpa hurriedly scratched his head, looking a little helpless, and said that this was how he himself had trained when he was young. Kim Hae-hyun could not help complaining. Jae-rim is an ordinary person. How can it be the same? Jae-rim sneered inwardly. "Go on, start arguing. I'll just sit here and watch you slowly fall apart." But at that moment, black energy suddenly spread around him. In the training ground, a gigantic hand appeared out of nowhere, and no one knew how it had found this place. At the same time, that same giant hand appeared inside the Hero Council's research lab, leaving the researchers stunned. A researcher immediately contacted her superior. Intruder detected, preparing to activate the laboratory defense system. But before she could even finish speaking, the communication device was destroyed outright. The little girl was seized by that giant hand, while the researcher collapsed to the ground, completely unable to stop it. Eula struggled desperately, crying as she tried to escape the restraint. Kay, in hamster form, instantly panicked. He had originally only planned to follow this little girl, sneak into the lab, and gather more clues. At first he intended to stand by and do nothing, but now that was impossible. Because he was hiding in Eula's hair, and now he himself had been taken along too. Still, this also gave him a chance to probe an even deeper secret, because he was curious too. Besides them, what other villains would be bold enough to openly abduct someone like this? In the next instant, Eula was directly teleported into the forest outside, and even Lee Yin froze in surprise. He sternly ordered them to release the little girl, or they would regret the consequences. But in the next second, Lee Yun was viciously pierced by claws. Blood dripped down from his fingertips one drop at a time. That enemy who had been lying on the ground seized the chance to attack Li Yan by surprise. Li Yan's intangibility could only activate when he was aware of an incoming attack, but this blow had completely exceeded his expectations. The man laughed wildly and said that everything was over now. Their mission to capture the Holy Maiden had already been completed, and Li Yan would not be spared either. The villain stepped toward him one step at a time, preparing to finish off this troublesome hero completely. Eula shouted, "Don't hurt this hero. Spare his life." Kay was shaken. This little girl was actually this brave. Eula even threatened to bite off her own tongue, resolute in refusing to let them continue. The enemy turned to look at the little girl trapped by the giant black hand. "Of course we can. How would we dare defy the request of the Holy Maiden of Baiwan Church?" The villain gently brushed a hand across Eula's face. Kay suddenly remembered what had happened that night. J-Rem had mentioned before that a place called Baiwan Church was connected to the redemption drug. If you keep acting this arrogant, I'll rip your tongue out right now. The little girl frowned deeply, suppressing her anger, still refusing to lower her head. Kay's heart stirred, and he realized that his opportunity had come. This was the best possible moment to push his current mission forward. The villain named Haz, who used the giant hand, told his companions not to make a move yet. They had to withdraw as quickly as possible, because more heroes had arrived. A giant mech tore through the air and entered battle mode immediately. Gravely wounded on the ground, Lien recognized the newcomer as Kim Hae-hyun, director of the research lab. Speaking from inside the mech, Kim Hae-hyun said that he would never let the enemy escape from here. But the villains had already prepared their counterattack too. One of them forcibly blocked every attack, because he was the core of this team. Laughing loudly, he absorbed all the damage directly into his own body. Then he took a deep breath and fully activated the green power throughout his body. Violent green energy exploded outward, turning into sharp blades. The mech was hit by a massive impact instantly. The system immediately sounded an alarm, showing that output power was already nearing its limit. In the next second, the mech exploded outright, and Kim Hae-hyun fell from midair. J-Rim and Grandpa were on their way to the scene, but Grandpa told him not to go any farther, because he could not help anyway. But J-Rim was not listening at all. Something this interesting, how could he possibly not go see it with his own eyes? Grandpa pulled open the car door, ready to set off immediately. But then he suddenly noticed that the pet carrier in the car was empty. In an instant, Grandpa redirected all his fury toward those villains. He was furious, never expecting that those intruders would not even spare the little dog. It was despicable. But J-Rim knew very well that the puppy had not gone missing at all. It was somewhere right now, carrying out the mission he had assigned. Grandpa suddenly called out to J-Rim. You must be worried about that little dog too, right? Your face has gone pale. Of course, even though someone else is taking care of him now, he's still very important family to me. So Grandpa decided to take J-Rim along to search, unwilling to leave him alone in the office to brood over things. In the rainy forest at night, heavy rain poured down, and cold damp fog blanketed the entire woodland. The researcher bent down and softly tried to comfort the gravely injured Kim Hae-hyun. Before long, J-Rim and Grandpa also arrived at the scene. J-Rim immediately stepped forward to ask about Kim Hae-hyun's injuries, while also pressing to know whether those villains had all been subdued. Kim Hae-hyun forced himself upright and indicated that he could still hold on, but that there was something even more important he needed to say. Only then did the researcher explain that all the villains had escaped, and they had also taken away an extremely important person. The kidnapped person was none other than Eula, the sole heir of Jiangsu Pharmaceutical. Kim Hae-hyun said that they had to act immediately. The situation was already extremely urgent. Seeing this, J-Rim decided to send Kim Hae-hyun to the hospital first, while also realizing that the little girl who had been abducted was the same child Kay had run into before. Grandpa's expression turned ugly, and he quietly cursed Kim Hae-hyun for being such a reckless brat. Because at the time, Kim Hae-hyun, as the head of the lab, had insisted on charging in alone first. Grandpa recalled that scene. He had originally wanted to rush in to support him immediately, but Kim Hae-hyun had stopped him. In the end, they still failed to protect that little girl, and Kim Hae-hyun had been blaming himself ever since. Grandpa let out a soft sigh and said that although Kim Hae-hyun was smart, he was used to carrying everything alone. The scene flashes back to Kim Hae-hyun as a child. Ever since he was young, he had always handled everything himself and refused to rely on others. Even when he trusted his family in his heart, he still always had the habit of bearing all the danger and responsibility alone. Grandpa said that this was his greatest weakness. Once he got too invested, it became easy for him to lose his reason. J-Rim cut them off and said that this was not the time to talk about that. They needed to get to the hospital for treatment first. But just then, his phone suddenly vibrated. J-Rim immediately sensed that a message had come in. The moment he saw the contents, his expression changed drastically, and his heart sank. Grandpa told Kim Hae-hyun that the intruders had not only taken the little girl, they had also taken the little dog. Are you talking about that little girl? So the battle is already over. You've already fought them? In other words, you're now certain that the little girl has been kidnapped? Looking at his phone, the knight said that the GPS had shown the target still here 5 minutes earlier, but now the signal had suddenly changed abnormally. Kim Hae-hyun was visibly stunned when he heard that. He had not expected the other party to have installed a tracking device as well. But the knight paid no attention to his surprise and instead recognized Grandpa Kim Ho at a glance. This was the first time he had truly met this legendary senior. He admired Grandpa immensely and immediately stepped forward to shake his hand. Grandpa was pleased to see him too, but still went straight to the point and asked where the kidnapped girl was now. But the knight's attitude instantly turned cold, and he asked in return why he should tell them anything. Why should I hand over clues to fake heroes like you? Who can't even protect ordinary people? In the end, the knight added coldly that it seemed the former legend had long since lost his former glory. A combat robot immediately prepared to stop the knight as he turned to leave. Kim Hae-hyun spoke up directly, saying that the man simply did not understand the current situation. That phrase "fake hero" completely set him off, and he shot back on the spot, saying that the other man had also failed to protect the people he wanted to protect. So who was the real fake hero? The knight only replied lightly that Kim Hae-hyun's temper was a bit too hot. The researcher hurriedly rushed over and urged everyone to calm down. This was absolutely not the time for internal conflict. It seemed that this attack targeting the council was already beginning to tear them apart from the inside. Jae-rim quickly stepped forward and stopped both sides, refusing to let the conflict escalate any further. He told them not to start fighting here. His eyes reddened as he restrained his emotions and said that one of his family members had been taken too. Even though he was only an ordinary person, he still found the courage to question the knight and ask where his family member had been taken. The scene flashes back to a little earlier, when Jae-rim had suddenly received a message. It was from Kay, saying that he was going to use this opportunity to clean out the people involved with the church while he was at it. Kay also said that he would send his location in sync, and only then did Jae-rim realize that Kay had secretly followed those intruders. With a trembling voice, Jae-rim asked the knight whether they could not have gone far yet, whether they were still somewhere nearby. His pet had been taken too, and he wanted to know where they were as much as anyone. At last, the knight relented and said that those people had most likely taken the target to the outskirts of the city. Meanwhile, the kidnapped little girl unexpectedly spotted a glowing phone. A hamster? Text messages? Eula's eyes lit up, and she was amazed to discover that there was actually a hamster that could send texts. Kay panicked at once and turned to flee this dangerous place. The steady sound of footsteps slowly drew near, and the villain noticed that something was off and began carefully scanning the surroundings. He walked over to the little girl and soon found the phone lying on the ground. Kay shrank into the corner and hardly dared to breathe, because that was the only thing he had for contacting his master. The villain crushed the phone in one hand, mocking the little girl for actually thinking she could secretly send a message. But in the next second, he suddenly stopped moving, as though he had noticed something else. He slowly bent down to take a closer look, and happened to spot the tiny hamster trembling in the corner. The scene shifts again to the Hero Association. Kim Young-sik was completely enraged. He had to know exactly what kind of villains were behind the kidnapping of the little girl and the puppy. Chief Hero Evaluator Lee Yoon explained that this was a brand new villain organization. They were called the Meteorologists, and they operated in a vicious and bizarre manner. Their leader controlled the power of lightning, and the other members each had different weather-related abilities of their own. This group of desperados had always been obsessed with endless bloodshed. Ever since the last resistance movement ended, they had become even more brazen, and had even begun resorting to despicable methods like taking hostages. Now, the heroes had to prepare in advance for an attack that could come at any time. After discussion, it was decided that Kim Hae-hyun would be responsible for protecting Jae-rim, and that no further accidents would be allowed under any circumstances. Kim Hae-in would be protected by Kim Hae. Kim Hae-hyun had already made up his mind that this time he would definitely protect Jae-rim, so he had long since begun rigorous training. Jae-rim chose to trust him for the time being. Right now, they all had to first do what each of them was responsible for. Still, he remained worried about the puppy's safety, so he asked whether he could go to the restroom first. To his disbelief, Kim Hae-hyun wanted to follow him there too, and Jae-rim looked at him in disgust and told him not to. So Kim Hae-hyun could only stand guard outside the restroom door and wait for Jae-rim to come out. Jae-rim was contacting Jae, but Jae had already completely lost Kay's signal. Setting aside why Kay had started investigating the meteorologists, Jae-rim was already beginning to feel uneasy. He judged that because of the variable introduced by the kidnapped little girl, Kay's undercover identity would soon be exposed. Looks like it's only a matter of time before both sides clash head-on. So now we'll follow Q's suggestion and move directly to Plan D. This time I'll intervene personally. From here on, it's up to you, Q. Kim Hae-hyun had just been about to call out to stop Jae-rim, but suddenly he felt that something was off. Still, Q believed that with her many years of experience in disguise, there was no way she could be exposed. But the change in Q's aura still instinctively made Kim Hae-hyun suspicious. Between the city's high-rises, a figure was moving at high speed. Jae-rim was now on his way to the meteorologist's headquarters. At his side, Jae was controlling a robot and reminding Jae-rim that the Kim family would be on the route he had to pass through. Jae-rim coldly mocked that the Kim family hypocrites always became the most active at times like this, so he absolutely had to make his move before they did. Meanwhile, just as the Kim family members were about to act, someone called out and told them not to leave yet. The one who had come was the council secretary, Cha Young-sang. She stated that the council chairman did not support the Kim family's surprise attack this time. Grandpa directly reminded her that this matter did not require the council's involvement, it was the Kim family's own business. First of all, Kim Ho, this is not my opinion. The chairman has said long ago not to waste manpower on trivial matters like this. Are you planning to break that agreement with your own hands? That single phrase, trivial matter, instantly ignited the anger Choi who he had been suppressing inside. Even Kim Young-sik and Kim I-han, whose strength ranks in the top 3, have no need to participate in this operation. But before the words had even finished leaving her mouth, a familiar figure had already appeared silently. Choi Young-won walked over slowly and said that he would handle this matter personally. With a faint smile, he said that this area originally belonged to the Choi family's jurisdiction, so solving it for them would be no trouble. Standing high above and looking down at all of this, Jerem's eyes were full of disgust for these hypocritical heroes. Even now, they still could not see what truly mattered most at this moment. Deep within a dark stone corridor, a secret ritual was about to begin. A woman named Rain confirmed that the Holy Maiden ritual could begin immediately. The cultists had already been waiting a long time, and now the ritual officially began. They also knew very clearly that both the church and the heroes could come storming in at any moment. So Hazen and Sloth were guarding the main entrance, making sure that no outsider could break in. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck fiercely. Rain was still confused, and in the next second, the wall exploded apart. In a calm tone, Sloth said that it was just an annoying rat. A rat? Rain felt that he was making too big a fuss over nothing. He said irritably that this rat was causing far too much trouble and had already put him in a very bad mood. Kay was hiding in a corner, and just a moment ago he had almost been hit by that blow. Sloth said that Rain had clearly told him earlier that before long, they would personally kill all the bastards who had driven them to this point. But now he had already waited here until his patience was nearly gone. Rain sighed inwardly. Ever since that day, Sloth's emotions had remained unstable. The cultists said excitedly that now they could finally begin, and that when that time came, they would finally be able to turn everything around. The coffin let out a creak and slowly opened. From inside it, the little girl timidly asked whether her uncle had come to save her. That cultist immediately hugged his pitiful niece Eula, his eyes full of pain. The scene shifts back to the night when Jay had interrogated why. Jay did not understand why the cultists allied with the meteorologists were so obsessed with capturing the little girl. But Y said that he had already been imprisoned for 8 years and had long since lost touch with them. Even so, he was still deeply wary of the meteorologists, especially the strength of their leader. That man called Sloth had to be treated as a top priority. He was extremely dangerous. The cultist looked completely unable to believe it and said painfully that his mad younger brother had actually pushed his own niece into the role of Holy Maiden with his own hands. Looking at the little girl with heartache, he knew that she had touched those eerie corpses, had been used by others all along, and had lived an unimaginably miserable life. But in order to preserve the so-called miracle, the one who created the miracle instead had to be erased. He said coldly that this was the price of allowing evil people to be brought back to life. In his memory, the father was holding the young Eula, and a corpse was lying beside them. The little girl curled up in her father's arms, full of fear and unease. But her father comforted her, saying that as long as she treated all of this like a live stream and performed miracles like a hero, that would be enough. The word hero was engraved into Eula's heart over and over like that. The cultist raised his dagger and drove it toward Eula, and Eula also understood that now, no one was coming to save her. That was why she wanted so badly to become a hero, because only then could she protect herself. At that moment, a hand suddenly clamped down on the man's wrist. "You cold dog. You destroyed the phone that was given to me. How are you going to pay for that?" Kay raised his hand and exerted force. The cultist immediately shouted that an intruder had broken in, while Kay sneered back at them for being a bunch of ridiculously arrogant fools. Looking at Kay's back, a thought suddenly surfaced in the girl's mind. He was different from those heroes. Kay turned his head slightly and looked at Eula. In the next second, he cut the ropes binding her. Kay spoke coldly, telling the troublesome little girl to run already and stop staying here just to drag him down. But at this moment, the girl had already completely started idolizing Kay. The scene returns to the cleaning company, where Q and Kim I-han are still locked in a standoff. Kim I-han's gaze was icy as he stared fixedly at the person in front of him. Q was completely mortified inside. She simply could not figure out how she could possibly have been exposed when she had left no flaws at all. But Kim I-han's face kept drawing closer and closer, until Q began to panic entirely. Back when Jae-rim had just met Q, he had already discovered that this woman had never become famous because of any superpower, but purely because of her disguise skills. At that time, she was a top assassin known as the Woman of 1,000 Faces, and Jae-rim had decided to bring her under his command, to overturn this world together with him. Even the executor had acknowledged her abilities, which made her confidence reach its peak. She believed that absolutely no one in the world could see through her disguise. She had always firmly believed that no one in this world could ever expose the meticulously crafted disguise techniques she relied on. But Kim Il-hun directly pointed out that there was a scent of Versace Purple Diamond Dahlia women's perfume on her. Q broke down internally on the spot. She simply could not believe that the smell of her perfume could be that obvious. She forcibly steadied her expression. She denied it with her words, but inwardly she was already shaken, unable to believe that the fragrance had still exposed her. Kim Il-hun explained that he was extremely sensitive to abnormalities in the air, and that even the faintest scent in it could not escape him. He kept pressing closer, demanding to know what secret Jaerim and Siona were hiding. Q's heart stirred. She suddenly felt that this was actually the perfect chance to sabotage the executive's marriage and, at the same time, take the opportunity to get close to him. So you just bought the same perfume. I see. Case closed. Kim Il-hun sounded as if he were sulking, and even spoke with a trace of jealousy, saying that he wanted to use this woman's perfume too. Q exploded with anger at once and directly said that it was not like that at all, yet her hand reacted on instinct. With just that one move, Kim Il-hun dropped straight to the floor. Q panicked on the spot. She had done assassinations for far too long, and striking out had already become a conditioned reflex. She hurriedly crouched down and shook Kim Il-hun while frantically apologizing. But judging from the way things were now, there was no way he would be waking up anytime soon. Just then, the walkie-talkie lying on the ground nearby suddenly crackled to life. Kim Hae-hyun picked up the walkie-talkie and informed them in a low voice that something had happened. He revealed that Choi Young-won had set a trap, and now the other family members were unable to move, so he had to rush over and deal with it immediately. He also asked whether Kim Il-hun was with Jaerim, because he needed to send Kim Hae-in over first and then immediately notify the media. Lying on the floor, Q froze completely when she heard those words. Jaerim clearly acknowledged Q's abilities, but he had also specifically warned her never to go near Kim Hae-in during the mission. Sweat began to form on Q's forehead. Her mind was completely blank now, and she had no idea what to do next. Over at the church, Sloth had already arrived at the scene with the other meteorologists. He mocked the other side for daring to break in alone, though he admitted that did at least make him an opponent worthy of respect. K grabbed Eula in one swift motion. His legs instantly transformed into beast form, and his whole body leaped upward, charging straight toward the top of the church, before finally landing on the upper railing. K told Eula to run quickly and not worry about him, because he still had to go back and take these enemies down one by one. The heavy night pressed down, and the surroundings were unnaturally quiet. The guard MIP heard movement coming from inside and suspected that an intruder had already broken in. But the other guard did not think much of it and said that since they had been guarding the place the whole time, there was no way anyone could have gotten in. Besides, with Sloth holding the line, nothing could possibly go wrong. MIP swore that in order to follow their resurrected leader, he would never allow any enemy to pass through this line of defense. MIP suddenly sensed something. He lashed out in fury and demanded to know who had come. Want to have a taste of flame? He did not even have time to react. Now turn to ashes. How pitiful. You're still far too weak. Only at the very last moment before his death did he realize that the one who had come was the executor. And not long after the flames had completely died down, Choi Young-won and his group also arrived at the church. Choi Young-won said calmly that it seemed they had still arrived one step too late, while Kim Hae-hyun angrily demanded to know whether he had been deliberately stalling for time all along. Meanwhile, Jae-rim was already preparing to personally deal with the leader of the meteorologists. At that moment, Jae also sent over the latest intelligence. The leader of the meteorologists turned out to be Sloth, who was supposed to have died in the resistance movement long ago. A man who should have died 8 years ago has now resurfaced. Looks like I didn't finish the job properly last time. Jae hesitated and said that although he did not want to put it this way, he was still worried that Jae-rim might not be able to complete this mission smoothly. Sloth, I honestly don't care. Because in this world, no one can beat me. Still, since he dared to show himself openly, that means he came prepared long ago. That much is worth being cautious about. Meanwhile, the little girl was still desperately running. The whole time, she kept wondering who exactly the strange man who had saved her was. That person was not even a hero, yet at the most critical moment, he alone had stepped in to save her. And yet now, the little girl was still caught by the enemy who had chased after her. Rain smiled and said, "Holy maiden, are you trying to leave already? Won't you stay and play with us a little longer?" Eula's eyes were filled with helplessness and despair. She struggled desperately, but Rain told her not to be in such a hurry, because there was no one at home waiting for her return. In her memory, Eula's father opened his arms and gently called for his daughter. But his true face was actually that of a cult leader who used his daughter for profit. He forced Eula to swallow the drug of salvation, to strengthen her powers and create even more miracles. Countless people knelt on the ground in humble prayer, hoping to use Eula's abilities to save others. That night had also told her many times that running away was useless. But now, the exit was clearly right in front of her. This was one of the few chances she had ever had to touch freedom. When she was little, Choi Young-won had once told that blue-haired man that if he wanted to inherit Jongsu Pharmaceuticals' abilities, he had to do as he was told. Strange patterns appeared in the blue-haired man's eyes, and it was obvious that he had already fallen under Choi Young-won's illusion. He lowered his head and answered obediently. As for that precious daughter with superpowers, it would be best for her to keep quiet, say nothing, and act as if nothing ever happened. Rain kept speaking, saying that the person Eula should truly hate was her own father. He was the one who had chosen to cooperate with villains like them. But just then, a powerful brainwave attack suddenly struck, causing Rain's head to throb with unbearable pain. For a moment, she could not even tell what kind of ability had caused it. Eula shouted angrily that it was all that man's fault. Because in the beginning, her father had clearly treated her well and had not been some cult leader at all. It was that mysterious man who had led him step by step into the abyss. Rain clutched her head in agony. She remembered that Eula's ability was supposed to be a healing type, and right now, all she wanted was to kill the one in front of her first. Just then, crimson chains suddenly shot through the air, wrapping around her body. Flames spread along the chains and burned wildly. The villain has arrived. Rain recognized that damned mask at a glance. The girl's eyes widened suddenly as she looked at the figure walking out of the darkness. Since the other side also recognized the executor, it seemed Jaerim had no need to introduce himself. The girl stared blankly at Jaerim and asked whether the big blonde brother who had saved her was one of his people, because she knew very well that that man had also come with a mission, and was very likely one of the executive's subordinates. Jaerim tilted his head slightly, as though he found the girl's words interesting. He asked how old she was, saying that this little girl did not seem stupid at all. The girl nervously rubbed her hands together and answered in a small voice that she was 11 this year. Jaerim directly flung a loose black coat onto her face. Cover your eyes. What happens next will be brutal. The group on the opposite side, however, clearly still thought they were qualified to fight Jaerim head-on. Jaerim told the little girl to start counting 30 seconds, and by then, everything would be over. In the next second, a violent explosion erupted. Elsewhere, Haz was kneeling on the ground, barely holding himself up through his injuries, unable to believe what he was seeing. Choi Young-won slowly appeared, and all the other meteorologists at the scene had already been placed under his control. His gaze was cold, and with contempt in his voice, he said that the one in front of him was the last one left. Haz trembled all over, desperately trying to break free from the illusion's control. Once, he too had dreamed together with his companions of creating a new world and living a peaceful life. But now, the ground had long since been stained red with blood. Standing among the corpses all over the ground, Choi Young-won calmly reported that the enemies in the rear entrance area had all been eliminated. He then asked how far things had progressed on the other side. Kim Hae-hyun pressed the switch and activated the ability neutralization device. The ability neutralization device began to emit warning beeps, and the progress bar was slowly advancing, having already reached 10%. Back on the battlefield, Rain activated her power again, poisonous claws extending from her fingertips. She was thinking that this time, as long as she landed a hit on Jaerim, he would definitely die. But Jaerim merely raised a hand and easily caught the incoming poison claws. He quickly noticed that this deadly poison itself was flammable. He closed in instantly. Then all I have to do is touch you lightly. And won't you burst into flames on your own? In the next second, raging fire exploded outward, the flames reflecting the darkness on Jaerim's body. Rain collapsed to her knees in a miserable state, her face full of unwillingness, and desperately demanded to know why. Why did they have to stop them specifically today, when they were clearly only one step away? Clutching that oversized black coat, Eula counted to 30 and slowly opened her eyes. Jaerim slowly asked in return whether she wanted to hear a reason. Step by step, he moved forward and coldly said that getting rid of trash never needed a reason. The word trash pierced Rain completely. It was the first time she had ever been called that. Rain sneered and said not to be so full of himself, because this battle was far from over. She swallowed the drug of salvation, and her power surged instantly. In the next second, a rain of deadly poison poured down, with countless poisonous needles shooting madly toward Jaerim. Jaerim's body tensed at once, and with his own back, he shielded the girl in his arms. He glanced at the insect robot beside him and gave a low order for Jay to send the intelligence to K immediately. The insect robot responded at once, and Jaerim also told Jay not to worry about him, because poison at this level was completely ineffective against him. This ends here. This time too, he still told the little girl that she only needed to count to 30. So now, I'll end you with a single blow. Rain was so frightened that she collapsed to the ground on the spot. Outside the wall, Kim Hae-hyun heard screams coming from inside. He judged that something must have happened in there, and that they now had to forcibly break through the wall and rush inside. Meanwhile, Jaerim was still lamenting the fact that the brand new shirt he had changed into today had just been ruined like this. Just then, the little girl suddenly asked him whether he was the executor from the rumors, the greatest villain of all. She then asked whether the blonde big brother was also part of their team. Looks like she really can't stop thinking about K. Every other sentence is about him. But since she was connected to Baiwan Church, there was no way Jaerim could simply leave her alone. He told her that as long as she did as he said, she would be fine. For now, he first needed to know what exactly had happened to that blonde man. Eula almost did not hesitate at all and immediately agreed to Jaerim's request. She even directly said that she now wanted to join the executives team as well. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way I'd bring along deadweight like you. Just then, green cutting beams crisscrossed through the air, forcibly slicing open the heavy stone wall and wooden door. Jaerim froze slightly, and a thought flashed through his mind. Who had come this time? Kim Hae-hyun stepped in over the rubble, his face full of anger as he shouted Jaerim's nickname, Executor. You're actually trying to mislead even a little girl. How can you stoop so low? Jaerim only felt that this was outrageously unfair to him. Kim Hae-hyun clenched his glowing green gloves and directly demanded that Jaerim hand over the girl. But of course Jaerim had no intention of complying. Kid, you're nothing but a dog raised by the council. Don't stand here telling me what to do. Seeing that Jaerim was preparing to make a move, Kim Hae-hyun also immediately entered combat stance. But in his heart, he actually knew very clearly that he was no match for Jaerim at all. And from the attack he had encountered while breaking in just now, he had already confirmed that Jaerim had not joined forces with the meteorologists. That only made him even less able to understand why Jaerim had personally appeared here. He recalled the past and demanded to know whether Jaerim intended to slaughter the entire villain organization again, just like during the suppression of the resistance movement. A cold red light flashed in Jaerim's eyes as he asked in return, and if that's true, what exactly can you do about it? Kim Hae-hyun said that he remembered Jaerim had never harmed civilians during the resistance movement, so why was he targeting a little girl now? Don't you think you're talking a little too much nonsense? Jaerim was clearly already running out of patience. The little girl hurriedly interrupted and said that things were not what Kim Hae-hyun thought at all. Patting her chest, she loudly declared that she herself had been the one to make this proposal to the executor. But Kim Hae-hyun simply would not listen. He asked back whether chasing his sister and her fiancé had not been enough for Jaerim, and whether he now had to target children too. Eula was instantly enveloped by a protective barrier. So now you won't even spare innocent children anymore? Then this time, I absolutely won't show you any mercy again. The smoke and dust from the explosion obscured Kim Hae-hyun's vision so badly that he could not aim at all. But he could sense that the executor had already left with the little girl. My next attack, can you still block it? Clearly, this move from Jaerim had completely shaken Kim Hae-hyun. Then, goodbye. Kim Hae-hyun looked utterly confused. He simply could not understand why the executor had not directly attacked him. No, wait, where exactly are you taking that little girl? Eula only felt that Jaerim was unbelievably cool. Jaerim, meanwhile, told her not to move around, because he still had to keep heading to the next destination. And Kim Hae-hyun was still chasing after them from behind, shouting as he ran for Jaerim to release the hostage immediately. In the dungeon, Rain lay weakly collapsed on the floor and asked in a low voice, the executor, has he already left? Footsteps slowly drew nearer, and the person answered calmly, yes. The blue-haired boy had a lollipop in his mouth and stretched out a hand toward Rain, but in the next second, he grabbed her face instead. Licking his lollipop, he spoke in a mocking tone, ridiculing Rain for having completely ruined everything. Now tell me, exactly how much of the drug of salvation did you take? Did you really think that kind of thing was for you to waste however you pleased? And nearby, the ability neutralization device had already advanced to 80%. Meanwhile, Kay had been knocked to the ground and no longer had the strength to resist. Seeing that Rain had not returned for a long time, Sloth decided to personally go and bring the Holy Maiden back. But just then, someone else arrived. Kay looked up and realized that the person who had come was not the boss. Choi Young-won let out a helpless sigh. Why are there filthy villains all over this place? Sloth stared at the newcomer for a few moments, feeling that the face looked somewhat familiar. Touching his chin, he admitted that he had originally wanted to capture a more important target. But now it seemed he had to get rid of these annoying minor players first, or they would just keep getting in the way. Sloth immediately activated his power, clearly not expecting to be called a minor player. He was going to make the other side understand who the strongest one here really was. Stop. Sloth's body stiffened on the spot, and he discovered that he was no longer in control of himself. A terrifying pressure forced him down. It's fine. Losing to me is perfectly normal. Choi Young-won spoke calmly and told him that the ancient spell he had cast on him long ago was still in effect even now. He could not understand why Sloth had suddenly begun acting so recklessly, even going so far as to disobey orders. But I already told you long ago that you must obey Baiwan Church's arrangements. His thoughts reversed, and memories from 2 years ago slowly surfaced along with that whisper in Sloth's ear. His subordinate excitedly called out Sloth's name. It actually worked. Sloth opened his eyes blankly, his mind completely empty. He even turned to ask the person beside him whether he really was the boss. These were the after-effects left behind by the treatment. The symptoms included fragmented memories, weakened mental strength, and a noticeably heightened aggressiveness. Rain slowly told Boss everything they had gone through along the way. Sloth listened in silence and finally came to recognize his identity as a villain once again. After being defeated in the resistance movement 8 years ago, Sloth had remained in a coma ever since. Now he had finally awakened, but a full 8 years had already passed, and his former subordinates had actually still been waiting for him. Watching them worry over him and grow restless for his sake made him feel indescribably miserable. And it was at that very moment that a violent emotion he could not suppress began to surge inside him. In the next second, the wall exploded apart, and Sloth coldly declared that he would kill his way back and never let those arrogant heroes off. From that moment on, Sloth developed an extremely strong conviction in his heart. He would clear the way for his subordinates. He became convinced that only by becoming more ruthless than the enemy could he truly protect the people around him. He had to become so strong that no one would ever again dare to touch him or his subordinates. So on the surface, he obeyed Baiwan Church and accepted the Holy Maiden's treatment. But in reality, Sloth had never intended to become one of them from the very beginning. He had only wanted to uncover the secret to keeping miracles alive, while waiting for a chance to bite back at them. But looking back now, everything he had done in the past had ultimately been his own choice. Choi Young-won held out a dagger in front of Sloth, and Sloth actually reached out and took it against his will. He recognized Choi Young-won, but his body still could not break free from the other man's power. That magician had once again overwhelmed him with effortless ease. The blade pierced straight through his palm. Sloth's expression froze on the spot. Rain rushed forward and stood in front of Sloth, desperately trying to wake him up. She told Boss not to forget his wish, and not to forget the future they had once longed for together. But in the next second, Rain realized that her energy was leaking out wildly. It was the uncontrollable side effect brought on by abusing the salvation drug. A surging wave of dark energy suddenly erupted, and the twisted, mutated monster let out a shrill howl. Choi Young-won said blandly that the scene was indeed admirable, but unfortunately, everything was already too late. As the notification tone sounded, the progress of the ability neutralization device officially reached 100%. An invisible suppressive force instantly spread across the entire church. That overwhelming aura directly cut off the monster's power from continuing its rampage. Rain froze, because she could clearly feel her strength rapidly draining away. Looks like this is as far as your power goes. Since you showed me such an unforgettable sight, I'll return the favor with a move prepared especially for you. In the next second, dazzling sword light slashed across the space, instantly cleaving Rain apart. Not bad, right? I did learn a bit about cutting techniques, after all. Sloth let out a broken roar and cried out despairingly toward his fallen subordinate. But Rain only apologized and said that she could no longer stay with him until the end. Watching the blood continue to drip from his palm, Sloth was completely swallowed by grief and fury. Choi Young-won raised his hand and lightly touched the stone wall, calmly remarking that a device capable of suppressing berserk powers really was a great invention. Sloth clenched his still bleeding fist tightly. I'm going to kill you, Choi Young-won. The blade came slashing over violently, but Choi Young-won easily dodged it with a slight turn of his body. With just a single slash, he tore open both pain and hatred together. Lowering his eyes, he raised a hand and wiped the blood from his cheek, saying with a trace of mockery that the other man had already lost his powers and yet still dared to act so recklessly. Choi Young-won said mildly that since the other side had struck first, he had merely returned the favor with a casual slash. Sloth crashed heavily to the ground and died miserably on the spot. In the end, he still failed to protect anything. Choi Young-won turned and left, declaring that this farce ended here. But he did not notice that one of the executive subordinates was still nearby, and as a result, that person actually managed to escape. K, transformed into a hamster, was rescued by the insect robot, and K also decided that after completing the new mission, he would go reunite with Boss. The scene shifts to a ruined abandoned high-rise. J-Rim spoke calmly. So, is this where the story ends? The little girl admitted that she did not know who that person really was, but she did know what his power was. While thinking about the forces behind Baiwan Church, J-Rim also judged that even if he got rid of Kim Hae-hyan now, he still might not gain anything valuable. The little girl's eyes lit up as she tugged at him and begged him to take her with him. There was still unfinished business right in front of him, and J-Rim had almost forgotten that she had just made that request. It reminded him that Kay had once said with the same conviction that he would definitely be useful. At this moment, Eula somehow carried a bit of Kay's shadow as well, and she kept desperately promising that she could definitely help J-Rim. Jaerim crouched down on one knee and asked her what exactly she meant by useful. But his stance was very clear, and he still refused her directly, saying that his team did not take in anyone under 18. Still, there is one thing I have to remind you of. Just then, a mech suddenly appeared with a roar. Jaerim had finally been caught up to. Inside the cockpit, Kim Hae-hyun was still repeating the same words, telling Jaerim to put the little girl down immediately. Jaerim lifted the little girl up with one hand and, in passing, told her not to trust bad people so easily. He did not truly want to use a hostage as leverage, but teaching her to stay wary was absolutely necessary. But Eula said that if Jaerim wanted to burn her to death, then he could do as he pleased. Because no matter how Jaerim hurt her, in the end she would always be able to heal herself. That was also why her father had called her a saint, because she had that kind of ability. Pretty amazing, right? But no matter what, she would still become a hero in her own way. It was just that right now, the person she most wanted to save was herself. Because she had already changed. She no longer wanted to become one of those heroes she had once believed in. Hearing this, Kim Hae-hyun grew more and more agitated inside. The situation was already a complete disaster. Those absurd decisions made by the council, delaying rescue again and again, had also caused this child to lose faith completely. Jaerim let go of her, but inwardly he was thinking that this little girl's healing ability might truly prove very useful someday. But what if one day she encountered a wound so severe that even she could not heal herself? In the next second, Jaerim directly pushed the little girl off the edge of the high-rise, and she instantly fell into open air. He told her to close her eyes for a few seconds, and that by then, Kim Hae-hyun would definitely step in and catch her. Jaerim believed Kim Hae-hyun could do it. He would never just stand by and watch. Always remember to stay on guard and never let bad people use you again. You're too naive. You should find someone more worthy of relying on. Go. Just then, a red-haired figure quietly appeared, and a long sword flashed with cold light. The mech rushed in at full speed to rescue her, while that long sword also cut through the air at the same time. The blade brushed past the little girl and slammed hard into the wall, and the thin line attached to the sword and shield forcibly stopped her fall. The knight appeared and declared that he had come to save her. Kim Hae-hyun immediately rebuked him, saying that such a rescue method was far too dangerous. The knight merely flicked his finger lightly, preparing to steadily catch the falling girl. But in the next second, the chain was suddenly severed, and Jaerim took the little girl away again. Kim Hae-hyun panicked at once, shocked and suspicious that Jaerim might be planning to kill her after all. Jaerim spoke coldly, telling the two of them to stop getting in his way. Flames exploded violently, and Jaerim dived downward, one hand tightly shielding the little girl. Watching this from afar, the knight realized that Jaerim had caught the child without suffering a scratch. But he did not relax. On the contrary, he became even more wary, because he suspected Jaerim still intended to continue holding her hostage. In the next second, the long sword became a streak of light and shot straight at Jaerim. A sharp sword light came slashing in, and the blade drove deep into the wall. Jaerim protected the little girl with one hand while standing firmly on the sword hilt. The knight simply could not believe it. Even with an attack at that speed, Jaerim had still managed to dodge it. Is this how you people usually save others? It seems that so-called heroes are nothing more than this. You don't understand what it means to protect. From the very beginning, Jaerim had never planned to hand the girl over to heroes like this. He turned his head and called Kim Hae-hyun over to take the little girl away. Stop standing there. Take her. Kim Hae-hyun took Eula, but still could not understand what Jaerim's true purpose really was. Jaerim only said lightly that this had merely been a bit of entertainment to pass the time. Was he satisfied with that answer? Then Jaerim instructed him again to take the little girl straight back to the Kim family and not let her father or the knight take her away again. Just then, the long sword behind him began to tremble, and in the next second, it shot back through the air. The knight raised a hand and caught the sword, telling Kim Hae-hyun to leave first while he decided to stay behind and stop Jaerim himself. Jaerim only found it laughable and directly mocked him, asking where exactly he got the confidence to stand there and fight him. But the little girl only felt irritated. The struggle in front of her made her feel increasingly miserable. Eula murmured softly, full of grievance, saying that everyone kept making decisions for her on their own. And yet, clearly, no one had the right to make decisions for her. In the next second, Eula completely exploded and shouted angrily that only she herself could decide where she would go. Jaerim suddenly felt a violent headache, because the little girl's power was now backfiring against his consciousness. The knight hurriedly told Eula to stop and not continue using this power. Golden light lit up in Eula's eyes, and circles of golden ripples spread rapidly outward. Quite a spectacle, isn't it? Even Choi Young-won had not expected that he would get to witness a scene like this. He immediately sensed that something was wrong and realized that under the stimulation of the salvation drug, the little girl's power had truly awakened. Even the people in the church's surveillance room were affected by this power. Those cultists all clutched their heads in pain and could not even stand steadily. Only Kay was completely unaffected, and he even looked confused, unable to understand why everyone around him was reacting so strongly. That cultist had originally been preparing to flee in the chaos, but instead ran right into the scene. Now he could only crawl while reaching for his earpiece, trying to put it on and block out the influence. And on the surveillance room screen beside him, the scene was being broadcast in real time. That meant Kay now already knew Jerem's location. But at this moment, Eula had already completely lost control. The knight quickly put on his earpiece, cutting off the brainwave attack. Then, he actually intended to finish the little girl off directly. But just as he was about to act, Jerem suddenly sensed that something was wrong. The knight had already begun gathering energy and was preparing to strike. But chains suddenly tore through the air and instantly wrapped around the knight, and even that sharp blade was crushed on the spot. Jerem warned him in a low voice not to act rashly. There was no need to go that far at all right now. The knight drew his greatsword, thinking Jerem was about to attack him next. But with the situation so urgent, Jerem had no mood to get tangled up with him. The knight swung out a sharp sword light with full force. This time, he was truly serious. Jerem, meanwhile, wove a defensive barrier out of chains and forcibly blocked the strike. But by the time Jerem reacted again, the other side had already vanished from where he stood. The knight was charging toward Kim Hae-hyun, his figure getting closer and closer. In the next second, a loud explosion erupted, as Kim Hae-hyun fired directly to intercept him, shouting for him not to hurt the little girl. The knight blocked the attack and said coldly that if they did not act now, everyone would be in trouble soon. And in truth, that was not entirely unreasonable, because every single person present had already begun to feel intense headaches. In the depths of his consciousness, Jerem desperately called out, trying to awaken Eula, who had already fallen into an abnormal state. He told her that releasing this kind of power while unconscious, whatever it was, would be extremely dangerous. The knight also told Kim Hae to let go of Eula, because this little girl was now the greatest source of danger and had to be taken away immediately. This kind of completely unchecked power would eventually devour the consciousness of the user herself and everyone around her. But now, everything was already too late. That strange wave of light surging forward had already completely swept over them. The violent impact left Jerem with no time to react at all. In the next second, he was pulled into Eula's world of consciousness. A long-buried part of the little girl's past appeared before Jerem's eyes. In the memory, her gentle father promised her that if she obediently cooperated with the examination, he would give her a present. At that moment, Eula called out to Jerem and indicated for him to come see her memories with her. She confessed that, in fact, she had already lied to Jerem back on the rooftop. She said that maybe it was precisely because Jerem had always thought she was a healing type that he had pushed her off without hesitation. The memory rewound once again, and the truth of Eula's ability was finally revealed. Her power was not healing wounds at all, but a far more dangerous kind of brain activation. Even the doctor was shocked while looking at the brain scans, because this was a special ability unlike anything ever seen before. This kind of brain activation really could awaken people from comas. But at the same time, excessive activation could destroy the nerves and even completely ruin a person's body and mind. Even more frightening was that, in some people's eyes, this power could even be used as a tool to bring the dead back to life. Eula's father sought out a hero mentor, hoping someone could help develop this dangerous power. But in Mentor Choi Young-won's eyes, there was nothing but calculation. What he wanted was not to save people at all, but to exploit this power to achieve resurrection from death. And from this moment on, the gears of fate quietly began to turn. A strange man entered Eula's life just like that, saying that he would teach her everything. Ever since this man appeared, the peaceful life she once had was completely destroyed. Her father, who had always been gentle, also began acting more and more strangely. In the way he looked at Eula, there was nothing left but fanaticism, and he kept calling her the Holy Maiden. Her father placed all his hopes on Eula and that church. From that point on, she was nailed firmly under the label of Holy Maiden and could never break free from it again. Eula could only be forced to obey and do those eerie and terrifying things. But even so, she still forced herself to stay calm and continue playing the Holy Maiden they spoke of. And her father, too, gradually became someone unrecognizable within that twisted life. Some people flew into a rage when their wishes failed, and vented all their anger on Eula. Faced with those accusations, she could only stand there full of fear, unable to say even a single word in protest. Looking at the images of the past, Eula still longed for that brief and ordinary daily life. The father from before had once hoped that she could have the bright future of a normal child. But those gentle hopes had long since been completely crushed by reality. Now, all he thought about was making her continue to carry out those so-called miracle performances. Eula gathered her courage and spoke her most ordinary wish aloud. She wanted to go to school. Her father pulled her into his arms, and there was even surprise in his tone, as though he could not understand why she would want to go to school. Eula forced out a smile and said that this had clearly been something they had once promised each other. But he coldly refused, saying that the holy maiden had no need to go to school. What was more, he even told Eula that from then on, she should call him godfather instead of father. Eula instinctively resisted and softly said, no. The emotions she had suppressed for so long completely erupted at that moment. She truly did not want to keep living like this anymore. Later on, Eula fell into a long period of sleep and completely became an object of observation and research for others. They feared her power, and they also began constantly studying how to control her. Eula desperately cried out for help, but no one ever came to save her. During those days when she was manipulated by others, she had no one she could speak to and could only silently endure all the pain by herself. But right in the middle of that gray darkness, an unexpected figure entered. That hero calling himself the Knight said that he would become the bodyguard specifically assigned to protect her. He took Eula by the hand, led her out of the shadows, and brought her back into the sunlight outside. He even took out his own highlight reels and, like a child, excitedly showed Eula his amusing moments. So he was that very popular hero, the Knight, and in the final hero voting, he had even made it into the top 3. Seeing that the little girl showed almost no reaction, he even began to get nervous, wondering whether he just was not interesting enough. To make her laugh, he pulled out all kinds of tricks and skills, and all of that finally brought a long-lost smile to Eula's face. Even she herself could hardly believe that she was still able to smile. At that moment, Eula felt for the first time that perhaps this person really could protect her. Watching those interesting videos of the Knight, she felt happy for the first time and understood what happiness felt like. She gathered her courage and cautiously asked herself whether she too could have such an ordinary and joyful daily life. With the Knight's help, her video account gradually began to gain followers. Through their little moments together, Eula finally learned how to smile from the heart. But even so, what she truly wanted in her heart was still to escape. She longed desperately to be able to enter the kind of school that ordinary children all went to. Trembling, Eula begged the Knight, hoping he really could save her from the abyss. The Knight gently agreed to her. But behind that promise of "I will protect you," there had, from the very beginning, been an unspoken condition. Once, Eula, barefoot, softly called out to the Knight in front of her. But the blood on his body made Eula instantly realize that something was wrong. The Knight coldly told her that she herself was a dangerous existence. At that moment, her father suddenly appeared and exposed Eula's intention to run away on the spot. The Knight kept saying that he would protect her and keep her from falling into darkness. But Eula finally broke down. She demanded to know why, after promising to take her away, he had still deceived her in the end. She finally spoke the truth in her heart. She had never wanted to be any kind of hero at all. Her very first wish had only been to save that miserable version of herself. As long as someone was willing to reach out a hand to her, she would have been willing to follow them. When she was little, she had even once thought of leaving with J-Rim. But in the end, like a fool, she had believed in lies once again. Now exhausted in both body and mind, Eula only wanted all of this to end completely. In reality, the Knight was already tightly bound by purple thorns and could not break free. J-Rim had never imagined that this little girl had gone through such a cruel past. And Eula had already completely sunk into out-of-control emotions. Right now, all she wanted was for everyone to disappear together. The restrained Kim Hae-hyun shouted anxiously, desperately trying to wake the sinking Eula. Alright, then, your thinking really is crazy enough. And when you make up your mind, you really are decisive. Eula looked utterly confused and simply could not understand why J-Rim would suddenly say something like that. J-Rim told her that she did not need to do it personally, because from here on out, he would bring all of this to an end himself. I understand how much hatred has built up inside you, but you're still too young, and your mind still isn't mature enough. Those hypocritical heroes, I'll make every one of them die in this revenge. The people who caused you pain, I won't let a single one of them go. Even your father who betrayed you has no right to be forgiven. I could even destroy their corpses and celebrate over their graves. All you need to do is take away their consciousness and leave the bodies behind as souvenirs. Hearing this, Eula fell completely into confusion. Did revenge really have to go this far? Was this really right? J-Rim asked her in return, don't you want every one of your enemies to disappear completely? From your father to those sanctimonious heroes, haven't you always been forced to live under them? And now, we finally have a chance to strike back. But Eula still hesitated, because this way of repaying evil with evil had never been the answer she truly wanted. No, she has that right. Let us end them with our own hands. Then let's start with these two heroes right in front of us. On the other side, Kay sensed that something was wrong and stared at the suddenly shifting situation before him with eyes full of vigilance. At that moment, hurried and suppressed panting came from the dim archive room. That cultist, who had finally managed to offset the effects of the brainwaves, felt the long-lost freedom again, and even his fingertips were trembling. Kay recognized him at a glance. This guy was the very one who had tried to kill the little girl before. It turned out that this cultist had already secretly prepared an underground passage long ago, specifically to deal with emergencies like this. He sneered and mocked those idiots, now only wanting to seize the chance to get away. But the next second, Kay sent him straight to the ground with a flying kick. "Now, this headset belongs to me." As Kay complained, after turning back into human form, this damned headache was practically driving him insane. He planted a foot on the fallen cultist and forced him to answer whether he knew what exactly was causing this headache. Meanwhile, Choi Young-won was also hurrying toward the battlefield. He absolutely could not let that girl die from the backlash after losing control of her powers. That godfather, gasping heavily the whole way, finally found Choi Young-won's trail, his emotions already completely out of control. Yet Choi Young-won still looked puzzled, not understanding why the other party had suddenly come looking for him. The godfather completely ignored the people trying to stop him, and said through gritted teeth that all of this was thanks to him. Only then did Choi Young-won realize that the illusion he had cast earlier seemed to have already worn off. So he directly threw a punch back, telling the other man to calm down first. In Choi Young-won's eyes, this little girl's potential still had enormous value to be exploited. The godfather collapsed on the ground, clutched tightly at Choi Young-won's pant leg and asked in grief and fury what exactly he had done to him and his daughter. "Don't you think you're ridiculous, godfather? The one who truly used your daughter from beginning to end was you yourself. What right do you have to blame me? I merely altered your perception a little, making you think that girl was only your adopted daughter. I just conveniently magnified your ambition toward Jiangsu Pharmaceuticals. In the end, all of this was nothing more than your own desire. When all is said and done, it was you who pushed your own daughter into hell with your own hands, and I merely went along with the current." Choi Young-won activated his power again and took control of him once more, while also reminding him not to forget their agreement, since this church still had value to be exploited. But the next second, he suddenly sensed that something was wrong. His power had actually failed. It turned out that the little girl was suppressing his ability. And just then, a bull suddenly charged over, and the cultist was so frightened that he turned and ran. The giant black bull case smashed through the obstruction and charged straight toward the boss. Although Choi Young-won had no idea where this wild bull had come from, in his eyes it was nothing more than something to cut down with a single strike. But at that exact moment, the godfather clung tightly to his ankle. Choi Young-won's center of gravity shifted, and a drop of cold sweat instantly slid down from his temple. The next second, his whole body was sent flying by the wild bull's horn. Even he himself had not expected that he would be knocked over in such a way. The insect robot immediately identified who the person that had just been sent flying was. But Kay had no time to stop and listen to it finish speaking, and turned to sprint wildly in another direction. Jay, on the other side, was speechless. Couldn't this guy at least let someone finish talking first? He could only contact Q first and try to figure out the overall situation as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Kay had already sensed that Jerem's presence was nearby. The out-of-control girl floating in the air had finally come into his sight, and she was now trapped in sleep. From the cultist, Kay learned that only animals would not be attacked by her power, and that if they wanted to end all of this, they had to knock Eula out directly. So Kay immediately turned into a puppy. His current objective was to knock the little girl unconscious. But when it really came down to it, he froze completely and had no idea how to do it. Covered in cold sweat, Kay frantically calculated in his heart which animal would be most suitable for knocking a person out. Eula had originally wanted to destroy every person who had ever hurt her, but at the very moment before she acted, she suddenly began to hesitate again. When those once brief but warm memories surfaced, she could not help asking herself whether this really was the ending she wanted. But at that moment, a shout suddenly cut off her train of thought. Hero Kim Hae-hyun rushed directly in front of Eula and shielded her behind him. Jae-rim coldly reminded him not to meddle, saying it was not yet his turn to interfere. But Kim Hae-hyun paid no attention to Jae-rim at all. He bent down and first apologized to the little girl, apologizing for arriving too late. Eula froze at once, completely unable to understand why he was suddenly saying these things. He said that he had failed to fulfill the responsibility a hero should bear, while Jae-rim told him to get out of the way and stop blocking the path. Kim Hae-hyun actually knew very well that the Hero Association had long since rotted, and that he truly had failed to come save her the first time. But even so, he still hoped now that this girl could turn back. In truth, the knight also had his own difficulties, and he also did not want to see the out-of-control Eula hurt even more people. Jae-rim cut in coldly. Kim Hae-hyun, did I give you permission to speak? But the other man directly pushed away Jae-rim's hand and continued bowing his head there in repentance. Eula grew more and more confused. She could not understand why Kim Hae-hyun was suddenly saying all this to her. Kim Hae-hyun slowly bent his knees and lowered himself to meet her at eye level, confessing that he too was a hero. But he too had stumbled all the way to where he was today, so he knew very well what that helplessness and pain felt like. The next second, Jae-rim kicked Kim Hae-hyun flying. apologizing only now. Don't you think it's too late? But Kim Hae-hyun still forcibly withstood the blow. Jae-rim questioned him, saying that in the end, he was merely trying to use a few pretty words to get out of the situation in front of him. After that, he directly told Eula to act according to what she truly wanted in her heart. Deep in his mind, a piece of the past suddenly flashed back. The former Jae-rim had also once thought of burning all of this down. But this time, he would not miss the opportunity again. Yet Kim Hae-hyun still did not give up. He kept repeating that there was still time for everything. In the past, he too had once felt that he was unworthy of being a hero. Until later, Kim Hae-in told him that a hero did not necessarily have to fight. So he began to calm himself and think clearly about what it was he truly wanted to protect. Kim Hae-hyun tried to draw the boundaries of his own protection. Then, little by little, he expanded those boundaries outward. Until at last, he finally understood what the meaning of his existence truly was. From then on, Kim Hae-hyun began his own life of patrols, dealing with all kinds of matters, big and small. He did everything he could to bring every person who needed help into the range of his protection as much as possible. But this path was still incomparably difficult, and it also made him constantly think about what responsibility really was. He thought about what, as a hero, he ought to bear for the area he was responsible for. He also thought about what, as an adult, he himself ought to shoulder. Without realizing it, his sphere of protection had long since come to include countless ordinary people. Kim Hae-hyun looked at Eula and confessed that he came from a family of heroes. Then he gently embraced her and once again apologized for arriving too late. With something close to reverence, he pleaded for the chance to properly protect her as an adult and as a hero. But watching the scene, Jae-rim only found those words absurd and laughable. And this time, Eula finally saw clearly what it was she truly wanted. It turned out that what she had always wanted to hear was nothing more than a belated apology. This illusion built from consciousness was forcing everyone to speak the truest words hidden in their hearts. Eula's eyes turned red, and for the first time she truly felt that someone understood her. In her memories, her father lowered his head and apologized to her with regret. She suddenly thought that if she could have heard her father's and Mr. Knight's apologies earlier, perhaps things would never have come to this. Even if she still would have stayed angry for a long time, that one apology truly mattered to her. Eula hugged Kim Hae-hyun and softly said that she had already forgiven everyone. No way, Eula, you're changing your mind just like that? Weren't we still going to destroy all of this? As Eula truly made her choice, this illusion made of consciousness also began to shatter inch by inch. At last, light tore through this chaos. With tears in her eyes, Eula smiled and softly thanked everyone. So many people had cared about her after all. After the illusion completely dissipated, everyone in reality finally realized that the headache had disappeared entirely. Eula's father looked utterly bewildered. No matter how he thought about it, he could not understand why his daughter had suddenly stopped. But Choi Young-won smiled. He already knew that he had lost. Since that was the case, many things were destined to no longer remain hidden. And now, Eula's father only wanted to immediately go to his daughter's side. But in the next second, he was violently struck down. I still don't understand. I clearly didn't do anything wrong, so why did I end up losing like this? Wouldn't you say so, Godfather? I didn't originally want to kill you, but right now, I really want to vent a little. Sorry. After saying that, he picked up his phone, unwilling to let any more unexpected developments continue. Once the call connected, Choi Young-won gave the order for his subordinates to begin acting first, saying that he would arrive shortly. The Choi family special forces had already been mobilized, their targets being the executioner and Eula, who had been listed as a first-level surveillance target. Inside the illusion, Eula was still thanking everyone. And Kay also sensed the change at that moment. He discovered that the layer of purple radiance had already disappeared. But the problem was, where was Boss? Jae-rim slowly opened his eyes, and his consciousness finally returned to reality. Now, he was finally back. Kay came too? I was just thinking about going to find him. Still dazed, Eula recognized that little dog. She immediately pulled it into her arms and asked in surprise how it had ended up here. She held the little dog gently, and in her heart she also understood that it had once again come running to protect her. Eula also spoke in lingering fear about how she had almost fallen from a high-rise, while Jae-rim seemed to have already forgotten what had happened in the illusion. Kim Hae-hyun also woke up at that moment and was still a little dazed for a while. Isn't this my Alexander III? The next second, Kim Hae-hyun pulled both the little girl and the little dog into his arms, and both sides cried out in pain, telling him to be gentler. Looking at it this way, the church problem has already been resolved, Kay has also been found again, and everything has gone fairly smoothly. And now, Kim Hae-hyun should also be able to protect this little girl well. At that moment, Kay sent Jae-rim a message, saying that the mission Jae-rim had given him had also been completed, just as Jae-rim had predicted before. The knight also woke up at this time, and his consciousness slowly returned to reality. The moment he saw that Jae-rim still had not left, He was obviously stunned, probably not expecting that the other man's presence could still dominate the whole scene. Jay immediately reminded Jaerim that in 15 minutes, there was still a very important date, and that he had to leave now. A date? If you hadn't reminded me, I really might have forgotten. Looks like I don't have much time left. But at that moment, the knight suddenly appeared again. Jaerim could not help mocking him. What? Had heroes now learned how to launch sneak attacks too? The knight directly issued another challenge to Jaerim, saying that the duel between them that had not been finished still had to continue. Who has time to fight you? All you do all day is fight and kill. Don't you ever get sick of it? If I waste any more time on you, my date will be completely ruined. But the next second, a deafening explosion suddenly burst out between the two of them. That's enough, knight. This no longer concerns you. Step back immediately. The researcher appeared and explicitly stated that the council had never requested support from the knight at all. The moment Kim Hae-hyun saw this, he immediately understood that the Hero Association had come to clean things up, and their targets now were the executioner, and Eula, who had already been classified as a first-level surveillance target, because her power rampage just now had nearly thrown the entire area into chaos. The researcher spoke in warning, telling them not to fight anymore, because the association would take over from here. Red light erupted all around the knight as he questioned on the spot why even Eula had to be taken away as well. The soldiers all raised their weapons and issued a warning in the name of the order from the next head of the family. Kim Hae-hyun, meanwhile, instinctively shielded the girl behind him. The Hero Association also coldly stated that anyone affected would bear the consequences themselves. Standing atop the ruins, Jaerim slowly spoke. You really are arrogant. And you think you can capture me? I am the strongest villain. What do you people even amount to? Right now, you are the ones who should be afraid. You can't even compare to a little girl. So what are you using to fight me? When all is said and done, you so-called heroes are nothing more than a bunch of janitors who clean up the mess afterward. Eula, once you become an adult, if you still want to be a villain, I'll personally come recruit you. Let this count as a small gift from me to the Hero Council, to thank you for showing up to make things lively today. Come on, let's blow this place to hell. In the next second, a violent explosion swept across the entire ruin, and flames instantly shot into the sky. People screamed and scattered in all directions as they fled the explosion. Looking at the sea of fire before him, Choi Young-won was completely stunned, never having expected things to turn out like this. Kim Hae-hyun, meanwhile, held Eula tightly under his protection, shocked that the spread of the flames could be this exaggerated. Kei secretly felt proud inside, because those fuses had originally been planted by him in advance, all for the purpose of taking the opportunity to wipe out all the enemies in one stroke. The knight gripped his long sword tightly and angrily shouted for Jaerim not to run, because the fight was not over yet. But by the time the smoke cleared, Jaerim was already no longer there. Now, he was preparing to take a shortcut, and quickly escape through the underground passage Kei had provided. On the other side, Kim Hae-hyun kept making call after call, but she still could not reach Jaerim. Her heart sank, and she almost instinctively felt that something must have happened to Jaerim. Just then, a reporter suddenly appeared, keenly sensing the scent of a big story. He showed his credentials and said that he had been entrusted by Kim Hae-hyun to come protect her and conduct an interview on the side. The people nearby immediately told the reporter to get lost, but the reporter said that interviewing this ordinary person connected to the Kim family was itself explosive news. The subordinate looked full of irritation, not expecting even a reporter to be this troublesome. Now even asking others for help was becoming unrealistic. But Kim Hae-hyun stopped the subordinate, feeling that perhaps this was exactly the kind of person they needed right now. So she quickly came up with an idea and directly told the reporter to help find Jaerim. At that moment, someone in the distance suddenly called out Kim Hae-hyun's name. Q immediately ran over. Sorry, I'm late. Kim Hae-hyun had originally been trying to find Jaerim, but Jaerim showed up at this moment on his own. Q had already received Jaerim's mission. For now, she had to temporarily pretend to be Jaerim and buy him some time. And for Q, this was also a great chance to sabotage the relationship between Kim Hae-hyun and Jaerim while she was at it. Baby, do you know how much I love you? How could I possibly forget you because of work? Come on, let's go shopping. I'll buy you the things you like. But Kim Hae-hyun directly shook off Q's hand. Q froze completely, having no idea where the problem was. Hae-hyun looked at her with obvious disgust. Who are you? Q's heart sank. That was not right. She had clearly just used the most common dating lines. How could that still expose her? Meanwhile, Jaerim was still sprinting through the sewers. He asked Jay whether the route through the passage had been figured out. Jay said it had already been scouted long ago, and the path they were taking now was already the shortest one. But even so, there were still 2 kilometers left to the destination, and it would take at least 10 more minutes. 10 minutes? Too slow. I need to be faster. It's all that annoying little girl's fault. She delayed the real important business. Jay said that he had already arranged for someone to hold the situation in place first, so they should still be able to buy a little time. But Jae-rim knew very well that this was not a long-term solution at all. Kim Hae-in was sensitive and cautious to begin with, and once she saw through everything completely, things would become even more troublesome. And when Jae looked at the surveillance feed, he was speechless too. They had only just met, and the disguise had already been exposed. Q still forced herself to ask in return why she would say such a thing. "I am Jae-rim." The reporter immediately snapped a shot of that moment, clearly having dug up another huge story. In the next second, giant screens across the city began broadcasting the live footage in sync, and passersby stopped one after another to watch and talk. The streets erupted into an uproar as everyone wondered exactly which stunningly attractive couple this was. The reporter also took the opportunity to start a live broadcast, enthusiastically telling all viewers not to go anywhere. He publicly revealed that the woman in the shot was none other than the always mysterious and low-profile youngest daughter of the Kim family, Kim Hae-in. At the same time, he directed attention toward this fiancé of suspicious identity, who was suspected of being the owner of a cleaning company. The reporter directly threw out the fatal question, asking Q whether she really was Kim Hae-in's fiancé. Kim Hae-in spoke up on the spot, saying that the person opposite her was not her fiancé at all, because her uncle should have been staying by Jae-rim's side the whole time. Yet now her uncle had not appeared with him at all. Q quickly explained that Kim Ihan had just happened to go to the restroom. But Kim Hae-in directly exposed the lie, saying that her uncle would never possibly leave the person he was personally protecting alone for that long. And when you smile, the corners of your mouth are 5 millimeters lower than usual. Also, where is the bracelet I gave you? That completely broke Q's composure. How was she supposed to act out details like that? Only one thought remained in her mind. Boss, hurry up and get here. And at this moment, Jae-rim was still rushing through the sewers at top speed, while Jae had no choice but to tell him some bad news. Their cover was now almost completely blown. Still, they had one backup plan left, which was to have Q directly kidnap Kim Hae-in. That way, they could still buy a little more time. That idea is pretty good, but don't make a move yet. I have another way. Q raised her hand, revealing the bracelet on her wrist, and calmly said that she had been wearing it all along. She also tried to soothe Kim Hae-in, telling her not to be so nervous and asking whether she had been under too much pressure lately. How about we relax first? But Q herself knew that dragging things out like this could not deceive Kim Hae-in for much longer, and Jae-rim was still desperately hurrying this way. Now should be the moment. I hope the act hasn't completely fallen apart yet. In the next second, a loud crash suddenly rang out, and Q whipped her head around, her whole body stiffening for a moment. I'm here. Looks like there's still room to salvage this. At the same time, the father-in-law also saw the live broadcast and immediately called Kim Hae-in to demand why he had not stayed by Kim Hae-in's side. As for Jae-rim, he deliberately made himself look injured, then put on the appearance of someone who had barely escaped alive from a villain's hands, saying that he had been kidnapped and had only luckily gotten away. Kim Hae-in immediately ran toward Jae-rim. In that moment, she was certain that this one was the real one. The reporter was dumbfounded on the spot. Two fiancés had actually appeared in the frame at the same time. The confrontation between the real and fake fiancé directly blew up the livestream with that twist. Jae-rim shot Q a look, telling her to withdraw immediately. I disguised myself so perfectly, and I still got found out. That's right, I'm a villain from the meteorologist organization. I originally wanted to sneak into the Kim family and carry out a huge massacre. The reporter immediately blurted out that a villain organization had actually wanted to marry into a hero family. This plot twist was absurd to the extreme. Looks like Q is quick on her feet and knows to dump the blame onto the meteorologist organization. But is she saying a little too much? Jae-rim was already getting impatient and urged her to hurry up and exit. The reporter held his microphone high and loudly declared that he would personally bring the villain before him to justice. You'll never catch me. Q flicked out a smoke bomb. In the next second, thick smoke instantly spread across the entire area. She took the opportunity to fire a grappling hook, leaped onto a high-rise, and prepared to retreat. After the smoke cleared, Kim Hae-in slowly walked toward Jae-rim. Once the noise died down, only the two of them were left standing face to face. Her heart was full of guilt, feeling that it was all because of her that Jae-rim had once again been dragged into this kind of danger. Jae-rim simply patted her lightly on the shoulder, not wanting to see her continue feeling miserable. In his mind, some scenes from the past surfaced again. Back then, she had also been uneasy just like she was now. Jae-rim leaned down close to her and softly said that this had never been her fault. Aren't I fine now? I will protect myself well, and I also hope I can stay by your side forever so that you won't be hurt anymore. No matter how hard things get ahead, we'll face it together. Just then, the father-in-law and mother-in-law also arrived. They too had seen the live broadcast and were afraid that something else might happen here again. Jae-rim said he was fine, but the blood at his temples still exposed his injuries. They repeatedly said that the injury was not light at all and that he had to recover properly, since this was their future son-in-law after all. And in the distance, someone else was calling Jerem's name. Kim I-hun finally showed up. He said that he had been stuffed into a car trunk by a villain earlier and had only just barely managed to escape. He said that after being knocked unconscious, he had been hidden in the trunk the whole time, and by the time he woke up, he had already seen the live stream on the street. After the crisis was resolved, Jerem's relationship with the Kim family had clearly grown closer again. Next, as long as he smoothly married into the Kim family, he could begin the next stage of his murder plan. But of all things, he had never expected that Eula would come too. Jerem froze for a moment, completely unable to understand how this child had suddenly appeared here. From now on, there would also be one more healing-type child living nearby. This is going to have too much impact on my plans. And the news was still continuing to ferment, as the story of the civilian future son-in-law quickly sparked heated discussion throughout the city. Politicians also seized the opportunity to make use of the issue, beginning to promote the feasibility of a system in which civilians could also become heroes. The high-level meeting was even broadcast live from beginning to end, with everyone watching to see where exactly this turmoil would push the situation. No one had expected that an experiment from years ago would now stir up the entire hero world. The file was slowly opened, and that past was finally exposed to the light again. The boy from back then had long since grown up. The president of the Hero Association watched coldly from the sidelines, treating this incident as an interesting game. And deep inside the dungeon, Choi Young-won was bound in iron chains. From deep within the corridor, a low humming sound suddenly came. A young man slowly walked up to the metal door. His expression was tense, but in the next second, the corners of his mouth suddenly curled into an almost crazed smile.